Chapter 640. Ling Han could actually break through to the spiritual infant tier, but he chose to take it slow. In his last life, he only cared about pursuing cultivation levels, but in this life, he obviously wouldn't be in such a rush. Instead, he would cultivate each tier to a perfect level before starting to break through. Anyways, he was still young, not even 20 years old, so there was no need to rush. He wanted to form 30 flashes of sword chi, then push the indestructible heaven scroll to the level of diamond body, and then break through to the spiritual infant tier. When the spiritual infant was nurtured, it would be tempered by sword ray and nourished by the indestructible heaven scroll, reaching the level of indestructibility. However, 29 flashes of sword chi was considered the limit by the ancients. Even the mysterious 3,000 was 3,000, not 3,100. It could be seen that this step was extremely difficult. And the body of diamond was also extremely difficult to cultivate. Ling Han had eaten so many natural treasures, but his body was like a bottomless pit. There was no time to fill it up no matter what. Of course, cultivating the 9 dragons' tire body art was also one of the reasons, causing much of the essence to be expended on the increase of physical strength. Kenya's side went very smoothly. With the medicinal pills and various treasures provided by Ling Han, he molded himself into the image of some hidden clan's second generation, waving his treasures and smashing people as he pleased, looking like, "I'm an idiot, come and scam me." He befriended a true disciple of the Heaven Sword sect, opening the way with medicinal pills and precious materials, smashing the other until he was willing to call him brother. Kenyi saw that the time was right and threw out the secret of the ancient treasure map, asking him to compare the ancient map and obtain the treasure together. That true disciple naturally agreed gladly. Anyways, there were still more than 4 months until the opening of the ancient academy, so he could definitely make a trip back and forth. Now, he could only wait. After another few days, the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing returned. They had been training in the mountains and fields, fighting the fiercest beasts to sharpen themselves and earn some extra money along the way. After all, spiritual infant tier beasts were all very valuable. Their flesh, skin, and bones could all be sold for a high price. However, now they all handed over their spoils to Ling Han. That was because only in Ling Han's hands would these spoils be able to display their greatest effects. Ling Han would never mistreat his own people, so he naturally gave everything to his 2 sworn brothers without holding back. The ingredients and tonics in the Black Tower were all at their disposal, and there was also spiritual liquid. This was a great tonic that could quickly increase the accumulation of origin power. For these 2 geniuses, the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, the comprehension of martial art was not too difficult. Instead, it was the accumulation of origin power that had to be firmly established step by step. It was impossible to build a castle in the air. Thus, the 2 of them increased their comprehension of cultivation level in the midst of battle, and also had the spiritual liquid to increase their accumulation of origin power. Their improvement was astonishingly fast, and according to this speed, they would be able to reach the peak of the spiritual infant tier in 2 years at most. It was terrifying. Freaks like Small Saber King and Lang Yitian had the hope of breaking through to the deity transformation tier when they were close to 40 years old, so they would have to reach the peak of the spiritual infant tier after 30 years old no matter what. The Rain Emperor was old in the first place, and this didn't count, but Mu Rongqing was only 25 years old, which meant that he could reach the peak of the spiritual infant tier before 30 years old. If he was lucky, breaking through to the deity transformation tier before 30 years old wasn't impossible. One had to know that Small Saber King and Lang Yitian received the full nurturing of ancient sects, and being able to surpass them in advancement was naturally shocking. It couldn't be helped. Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor, and added with the Black Tower that could accelerate the growth of spirit herbs, it would be strange if it wasn't fast. Could it be that a divine object like the Black Tower couldn't compare to the mere Absolute Saber sect and Heaven Sword sect? The Rain Emperor and the others brought back 2 big pieces of news that could shock the entire Middle State and even the vast lands. It should be a month ago, the Thousand Corpse sect bought Million Treasure City, the Rain Emperor said. Pooh! Ling Han instantly spluttered. That worked? The Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society aren't lacking in money, so why would they sell their home? He asked in confusion. And what price did the Thousand Corpse sect offer that even a Shattering Void tier elite and 2 heaven-grade alchemists couldn't refuse? If it weren't for fear of these three, the Thousand Corpse sect wouldn't have lured them away the first time, wanting to forcefully attack Million Treasures City and cook the rice into cooked rice. It was precisely because they didn't want to fight head-on with these three that the Thousand Corpse sect would compromise and buy Million Treasures City. The Thousand Corpse sect definitely paid a huge price, Mu Rongqing said. To be able to move the rich and imposing Spirit Treasures Pavilion and Alchemist Society, the Thousand Corpse sect must have paid a huge price. Moreover, to move a Shattering Void tier elite and 2 heaven-grade alchemists, it probably involves the secret of becoming an immortal and divine pill, right? Ling Han nodded. In these 10,000 years, aside from Jiang Yufeng, who was suspected to have entered the realm of immortals, he hadn't heard of anyone else shattering the void and becoming an immortal. Even if Jiang Yufeng became an immortal, that was only Ling Han's speculation, and there was no legend left behind. Feng Perian also said that shattering the void might be very dangerous now, so he didn't dare to break through immediately. Instead, he continued to increase his cultivation and wait until he reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. And an ancient sect like the Thousand Corpse sect's inheritance was definitely not weaker than the Heaven Sword sects, so they might have grasped the secret of becoming an immortal, and it wouldn't be strange for them to have a few divine-grade pill recipes in their hands. No matter what, it was a fact that Million Treasures City had fallen into the hands of the Thousand Corpse sect. However, since the Thousand Corpse sect paid such a huge price, their scheme must be even bigger. Ling Han said unhurriedly. Previously, he had speculated that Million Treasures City was either buried with a large number of Shattering Void tier corpses, or there was some precious treasure that could make the Thousand Corpse sect stronger. The 5 great ancient sects are very dissatisfied with this, and have already decided to send troops to attack Million Treasures City. Their attitude is very firm, the Rain Emperor said. From this point, the 5 great ancient sects are really warm-hearted. This is completely unlike them. Ling Han shook his head, his expression full of curiosity. It wasn't that there had never been turmoil in history, but it was rare to see the 5 great ancient sects make a move. Only when the Thousand Corpse sect appeared did they become extremely proactive, as if they had a personal grudge. The 5 great ancient sects battling the Thousand Corpse sect, this is really a big matter. If it's not handled properly, it might cause chaos in the whole continent. Ling Han said after some thought, and couldn't help but sigh. He was now in the process of growing up, and what he hoped for the most was a stable cultivation environment. He definitely didn't want great chaos. Since the Thousand Corpse sect dared to appear in public, they probably have a very high chance of success, the Rain Emperor said. Ling Han nodded. The Thousand Corpse sect had made a comeback, and it was obvious that they were fully prepared. If they were easily destroyed by the 5 great ancient sects, that would be too much of a trifle. What's the situation now? He asked. The 5 great sects are gathering their forces, and have even issued a command to the whole world to annihilate the Thousand Corpse sect together, the Rain Emperor said. However, we are far away from here, and the news needs some time to travel here. It's unclear whether they've started fighting now. Chapter 641. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said with a smile, with our current strength, this kind of thing can only be thought of. No matter who wins or loses, it's not something we can interfere with. Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing both exuded a strong fighting spirit, revealing an impassioned expression. Rain Emperor was a formidable character of his generation, and the Overlord's aura was the strongest. Mu Rongqing was sloppy, only interested in becoming the strongest in the world. The three had different personalities, but what they had in common was that they all had a fanatical pursuit of martial art, an indomitable drive, and fearless determination. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become sworn brothers. In another 30 years, it'll be up to us to guide the winds and clouds, they all said vehemently. Competing with Shattering Void tier elites in 30 years? If word of this got out, it would really make people laugh themselves to death. However, the three of them were filled with confidence in themselves. With their talent, added with Ling Han's alchemical pills, they definitely had the chance to charge into the shattering void tier within 30 years and rule the world. There's another news. Ling Han calmed down and asked again. This news is a bit interesting. Rain Emperor paused. Not long ago, a small city in the Middle State suddenly announced the establishment of the Purple Moon Empire, establishing a ruler, setting up 100 officials, and worshipping by all. Ling Han was dumbfounded. There was actually someone establishing a country. What was going on? Aside from the desolate north, the 4 regions and 1 state didn't have the concept of a country. There were only ancient clans and sects that divided the territory, each ruling over a region. Relatively speaking, the vast lands didn't have any laws and followed the idea that the strong were respected and that the strong were the law. Comparing the desolate 9 to the outside world, establishing a country was actually quite good. There were rules that everyone had to abide by, which could reduce a lot of killing. Of course, if the rulers were corrupted, then regardless of whether it was an empire, a sect, or a clan, it was all the same. Ling Han suddenly thought of why there were no empires in the Middle State and the 4 regions. Power of the nation was a good thing. At the time, Rain Emperor was only half a step into the flower blossom tier, but was able to rival a true flower blossom tier elite. Aside from Rain Emperor's own strength, power of the nation also played a key role. Since power of the nation was so good, why didn't other forces consider it? In the vast lands, the imperial court is a taboo. Mu Rongqing said, "The southern region has an iron law. Any faction can fight for territory, but they can't establish a dynasty. Otherwise, the entire southern region will destroy them." The Rain Emperor nodded as well and said, "I've looked through ancient records. The founding emperor of our country had only thought of founding a nation because he had discovered an ancient esoteric technique in the Devil Sky mystery realm. If it wasn't for the fact that the desolate north was too small and that it had deviated from the mainland, it would have been destroyed long ago. If you hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have thought of it. Power of the nation is obviously an extremely good thing and beneficial to cultivation. So why has there never been an imperial dynasty appearing in the vast lands?" Ling Han looked curious. In his last life, there had also been no imperial dynasty appearing. It was just that at that time his mind had been completely focused on alchemy, and he had not paid any attention to this point. But in the ancient times, the true ancient times, there were empires in the vast lands, and they were incredibly powerful. For example, the thunderclap ninth heaven was obtained from the treasury of the ancient dynasty. Moreover, this was not the strongest divine ability. That was something that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago. That ancient dynasty wanted to bring the entire vast lands to ascend to the realm of gods, but obviously failed. At that time, this ancient dynasty unified the entire continent and was incredibly powerful. Could it be that this Purple Moon Empire wants to serve? The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing both exclaimed. "Who's the ruler?" Ling Han asked. Surnamed Ma, called Ma Duo Bao, and called himself the Purple Moon Divine Emperor, the Rain Emperor said. "Pooh," Ling Han spurted out again. "Fuck, Ma Duo Bao." He recalled that when he was in Million Treasure City, Ma Duo Bao had once earnestly invited him to join them and split open the skies together. Who would have thought that only a few months had passed, and this guy had really done a great undertaking? However, without the support of top-notch strength, how long could this Purple Moon Empire exist? Wait, the ancient dynasty seemed to have failed in splitting open the skies, and then was destroyed. Ma Duo Bao also said that he wanted to split open the skies and even established a nation. Could it be that splitting open the skies had to be done in the form of a nation? Ling Han felt that his mind was a bit messed up. In this life, all sorts of messy things had come out. Ma Duo Bao was definitely not an idiot. On the contrary, this person's strength was unfathomable, and Ling Han couldn't see through him at all. Either the other cultivated some secret technique, or his strength was at least in the high-level heaven tier. Now, on the left was the Thousand Corpse sect, which was definitely not a peaceful lord. It definitely had its eyes on the common people of the world, wanting to torment them and refine them into corpse soldiers. On the right was the Purple Moon Empire. Since it had established a nation, then expanding its territory was naturally a matter of course. Conquering the world was unavoidable, and the majesty of the ancient dynasty reappeared. The world seems to be in great chaos. Ling Han sighed. Moreover, the 5 great sects also predicted that a similar great disaster would happen 10,000 years ago. Truly, all the excitement has gathered together, the Rain Emperor also said. We can only cultivate diligently and improve our strength to have the ability to protect ourselves and speak, Mu Rongqing concluded. Ling Han and the Rain Emperor both nodded.
That.
The rabbit listened for a long time at the side, raised its little paw, and said, Uncle Rabbit has some understanding of that so-called great disaster. Oh, speak quickly. Ling Han instantly became spirited. The rabbit put on an act and said, Where's Uncle Rabbit's tea? Ah. It still wanted to pinch it but ended up being bitten by Hunyo until it cried out. Speak quickly. Hunyo said in dissatisfaction. This rabbit was indeed somewhat despicable. It clearly knew that Hunyo liked to bite it the most, yet repeatedly tried to provoke Hunyo to bite it. It coughed and said, There's a rumor in Uncle Rabbit's line that every 10,000 years or so, the heaven and earth will conduct a reckoning. At that time, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering, and only a very, very small portion of people will survive. Reckoning? Ling Han was surprised. This was a different saying. People like Uncle Rabbit, who have old ancestors living in the divine realm, belong to the exempt category. No one dares to touch a single hair of Uncle Rabbit, but for people like you, that's tragic, the rabbit said. Ling Han couldn't help but scoff. This reckoning really bullies the weak and fears the strong. Brat, this is the life of a rabbit. Open up. The rabbit comforted him, but no matter how he looked at it, it seemed to be showing off. Reckoning? Why is there a reckoning, and who is doing it? Ling Han asked. The rabbit pointed at the sky and said, As for why, Uncle Rabbit doesn't know either. The heavens referred to the divine realm, and the heavenly Tao shouldn't go so far as to harm the common people. And from the memory stone that Zi Shuexian left behind, it was indeed people from the divine realm that came, wanting to annihilate the common people. Ling Han still returned to that old question. If the divine realm really wanted to reckon, how could the 5 great ancient sects stop them? There had to be another reason behind this, and the answer could be hidden in the clear Harmony Palace Hall. Ling Han couldn't help but want the ancient map even more urgently. Ling Han, come out and die. Chapter 642. Ling Han, come out to die. A cold voice rang out, and like a blade slicing past, the nearby leaves fell one after another, sliced into pieces. Many people vomited blood and were even more shocked. Who was this person? Just a voice was so terrifying, making people about to collapse. Third brother, your enemy? Mu Rongqing asked, and then immediately became excited. Wait for me to take him down. Ling Han smiled and said, Second brother, I'm afraid you're not his match. Oh, who is that person? Even the Rain Emperor was curious, revealing a burning fighting spirit. Small Saber King. Wang, a figure appeared. He was tall and slender, and his whole body was entwined with saber intent, turning into countless sabers of various shapes. There were long sabers, short sabers, gold sabers, silver sabers, and every saber was densely woven with vein-like patterns, emitting a powerful concept. Everyone's mind was in a state of panic, and some people even involuntarily knelt down, making them shocked. One had to know that those who could come here were all geniuses, and had at least formed a flash of qi, having the potential to be a king among martial artists, but even so, they still couldn't withstand this person's aura, which showed how terrifying this person was. A king among kings. Here, geniuses gathered, and after almost a month, there were obviously more people who came, but now, under the pressure of Small Saber King's aura, several tens of thousands of people didn't make the slightest sound, intimidated by one person. This was the bearing of a king among kings, making countless geniuses bow their heads just by standing there. Ling Han stood out, and the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing stood on his left and right, showing an attitude of advancing and retreating together with him. Small Saber King, peak stage spiritual infanteer. Even if the three of them fought together, no one would say anything. With this cultivation level, not to mention 3 people attacking together, even 10 people attacking together wouldn't be too much. No way, this brat even has a feud with Small Saber King. TSK. A few days ago, he did that with Fairy Yun, offended the Blue Thunder sect, and now he's being hunted by the Absolute Saber sect's Small Saber King. He's offended 2 of the 5 great ancient sects. Why does Small Saber King want to kill this brat? Could it be that Small Saber King is interested in Fairy Yun? No way, I heard Fairy Yun is in love with Lang Yitian. TSK, a love triangle, how messy. Wrong. Now you even added this kid. It's clearly a 4-sided love. Everyone said one after another. Not only women, but men were also quite gossipy, especially people like Li Fengyu, who wished he could yell at the top of his lungs. Small Saber King stood proudly in midair. He had been chasing after Ling Han all this time, but lost track of him. It wasn't until a few days ago that he heard that Ling Han made a scene at Wang Yun's banquet that he hurried over. His gaze swept across Ling Han and the other 2 as his lips curled into a disdainful smile. Do you think you can stop me with just the 3 of you? How would we know if we don't try? Ling Han's heroic spirit soared to the clouds. These 2 sworn brothers of his were also king tiers of martial arts, especially the Rain Emperor. He could be said to be a late bloomer, but instead, he had accumulated a lot of experience before he could explode, and his battle prowess was astonishing. Idiot. Small Saber King no longer had the interest to speak, and directly brandished his saber. A terrifying saber chi swept past, and like a shocking ray, it slashed down from the sky. False ray. Ling Han gave a loud shout, and directly unleashed the demon birth sword to block. Facing a strong enemy like Small Saber King, he couldn't possibly have the slightest bit of reservation, or else he would be playing with his own life. With a ding, the treasured sword met the saber ray, but Ling Han's figure was forcibly pushed backwards. His legs were like shovels, digging out 2 deep grooves on the extremely hard mountain rocks. Break. Ling Han gave a loud shout, and his long sword slashed downwards. Pooh! The saber ray was broken in the middle and sliced past his left and right sides. Meanwhile, the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing had already charged out. Both of them used fists, and with the intent of martial art and origin power wrapped around their fists, they possessed an extremely terrifying destructive power that could clash with sharp blades head-on. 2 minor characters that have just entered the spiritual infant tier want to become enemies with me? Small Saber King sneered, and drew his saber to slash, his aura imposing. The Rain Emperor roared in fury, and as he swung his fists repeatedly, fist rays surged and full of killing intent. Small Saber King finally let out a cry of surprise. Ray, even if it was only the condensation of 10 flashes of chi, that still surpassed 30 flashes of chi, this was a qualitative suppression. Mu Rongqing also showed his might. Although he didn't condense ray, his grasp of chi reached as many as 29 flashes, and his battle prowess similarly couldn't be underestimated. Below, Ling Han also charged up with his sword raised. 3 minor characters, not worth mentioning. Small Saber King immediately calmed down. Although the Rain Emperor condensed ray, he broke through with only 10 flashes of chi, so his strength was limited. Moreover, he had the advantage in cultivation level and was half a step into the deity transformation tier, but his battle prowess had long rushed to this level, at least having battle prowess of 5 stars of the deity transformation tier, so strong that it was hair-raising. He slashed with his saber, and instantly, Ling Han and the others didn't dare to receive it head-on, and could only retreat. Small Saber King laughed loudly, and stared at Ling Han as he slashed madly. This person killed his father, causing him to hate him to the bones, And there was also a little girl who obtained his thunderclap ninth heaven mystical power, so he had to kill her as well, directly extracting her soul. Ling Han snorted, and lightning flickered on his body as he instantly appeared in front of Small Saber King, slashing with his sword. "What?" Small Saber King exclaimed, not because Ling Han's speed was too fast, but because the opponent had lightning flickering, and that was obviously the thunderclap ninth heaven. How is this possible? A mystical power could only be passed on to one person, so why was there Hunyeo first, and then Ling Han, both of them learning the thunderclap ninth heaven? If he knew that not only Ling Han and Hunyeo, but also Helian Sun Shui also learned the thunderclap ninth heaven, what kind of expression would his face have? He would probably be shocked to the point of being unable to accept it. How could you possibly learn the thunderclap ninth heavens? Small Saber King said sternly. Hunyeo was obviously below and couldn't have had her soul extracted, so where did Ling Han learn this mystical power from? None of your business. Ling Han waved his sword and slashed urgently. 29 flashes of sword chi condensed into a fake ray, whistling towards Small Saber King. This was a fake ray unleashed by a 10th tier spirit tool, and its power was almost no weaker than a real ray. Even Small Saber King didn't dare to be careless, and had to brandish his saber to parry. Otherwise, if he was struck by the sword ray, even he would be heavily injured. Small Saber King's gaze was cold as he sneered, and said, "Fine, then I only need to kill you." Although he didn't take Hunyeo seriously, the little girl's speed shocked even him, and he couldn't guarantee that he could successfully kill her. His left hand pushed out, sweeping towards the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, while his right hand wielded his saber and slashed at Ling Han. Every strike was merciless. He only wanted Ling Han's life. Ling Han and his brothers attacked in unison, but Small Saber King was too strong. His deity transformation tier battle prowess gave him the absolute upper hand, and every strike he unleashed made Ling Han and the others look battered and exhausted. If it wasn't for Ling Han using the annihilating dragon star arrow to distract him, the three of them would have already suffered a crushing defeat. Ling Han swallowed a pill. That was the 5 Revolutions Black Jade pill. He had concocted a total of 3 pills. Previously, when he was battling Xianyuan Ziguang, he ate one, and now it was the second one. Once the medicinal pill entered his stomach, it immediately showed its effects, increasing his battle prowess by a whole 9 stars. His battle prowess had originally reached 15 stars of the spiritual infant tier, or even stronger, and now that his battle prowess increased by another 9 stars, he instantly soared into the deity transformation tier. Chapter 643. Who would have thought that what should have been a huge crisis was actually resolved so easily? Of course, it was also incredibly shocking. An immortal descended and made a move, suppressing the eye of Heavenly Tao to the point where it couldn't do anything about it. This was definitely a grand scene, and it could be considered as giving enough face to the demon servants. Young Imperial Empress, let's go home. The old woman in cyan took Hunyeo's hand, and divine light circulated, and Hunyeo's injuries immediately healed. No, Hunyeo wants to be with Ling Han. Hunyeo hurriedly struggled, and with a leap, hid behind Ling Han. The old woman in cyan immediately walked towards Ling Han, and the female generals did the same, all staring at Ling Han with unfriendly gazes. Of course, abducting a child, and moreover their young imperial empress, this man really deserved to die. The old woman in cyan stared at Ling Han, and a terrifying pressure circulated. Pooh! Ling Han instantly spurted out blood, and his body made a cracking sound. His bones were groaning, and even breaking. The physique that he was so proud of actually couldn't withstand the old woman's stare. As expected of an immortal, one that could even ignore the rules of a small world. Yi Shuang's face was numb, and she mumbled, "What kind of powerful existence is this, able to even break the rules of a small world? Could it be a Genesis tier powerhouse? Heavens, this lady actually had the fortune of meeting a Genesis tier powerhouse." This was truly invincible power. Not to mention Ma Duo Bao coming personally, Even if the five sex powerhouses descended together and displayed their strongest ability, facing this old woman, they would probably be killed in one move. You're not allowed to hurt Ling Han. Hunyo hurriedly stepped forward bravely, opening her small hands to protect in front of Ling Han. She glared at the old woman, exuding a shocking killing intent. Divine light actually rose from her chest, exuding an extremely powerful presence. Power of inheritance. The female generals all looked pious and knelt down one after another, murmuring something. Their gazes towards Hunyo were filled with fanaticism. Only the old woman in cyan was an exception. She smiled and said, as expected, Iyun handed the power of inheritance to you. Girl. You're our Rock Palace's young empress, the future supreme ruler. How could you be restrained by a man? This old woman eliminated this future trouble for you. You dare. Hunyo hurriedly turned around and hugged Ling Han. Ling Han is Nyo's. If you dare to touch a single hair on his head, Nyo will commit suicide. She seemed to have realized that she had no way to deal with the latter's strength, so she could only use her own life as a threat. Ling Han humphed, put Hunyo down with her in his arms, and said, I have no enmity with Senior, yet Senior insists on killing me. What logic is this? You've gone mad. This being is too powerful. Unless I recover to my complete state, I'm completely no match for her. Small Tower called out in his mind, its tone becoming incredibly terrified for the first time. Being able to make Small Tower lose its composure, the strength of this old woman was evident. The old woman in cyan sneered and said, Brat, how dare you? Do you know that if I really wanted to kill you, no one would be able to stop me? You're not allowed to harm Ling Han. Hunyo waved her arms and legs, extremely hateful. Senior strength is indeed far above this junior's, but just because this junior's strength is inferior doesn't mean that I don't have any pride. Ling Han was unyielding. Senior can kill me, but cannot shut my mouth. Ha ha ha. The old woman in cyan laughed loudly. Grand Elder, this brat has a very strong influence on the young Imperial Empress, so it's better to kill him, a female general suggested. That's right. The young Imperial Empress is still young and insensible and is most easily bewitched by others. This person's intentions are deserving of death. The old woman in cyan waved her hand and said, Fine. After we return, we will never be able to see this brat again. Seeing that he still has some pride, we'll spare his life. Yes, Grand Elder. All the female generals answered sternly. The old woman in cyan looked at Hunyo smilingly and said, Little girl, come back with me. No. Hunyo shook her head anxiously. The old woman in cyan sighed and said, Then I can only kill that Ling Han. No. Hunyo was anxious and pointed at the old woman's nose and said, Didn't you say you wouldn't harm Ling Han just now? But you're disobedient, so I can't do anything about it, the old woman in cyan said with a smile. Hunyo pouted, and after thinking it over, she finally nodded and said, All right, Nyo agrees. That's more obedient, the old woman in cyan said with a smile. How many years had she lived? How could it be that she couldn't deal with a little girl? Hunyo's eyes shifted, and she said, But Nyo wants to take Ling Han with her. Pooh. The old woman in cyan instantly choked and almost coughed. Why was this little girl so difficult to deal with? She said with a serious expression, No. This boy definitely can't go back with us. Hunyo bawled loudly and began to make a scene, but the old woman was unmoved. Don't worry, you go back with them first. I will definitely find you, Ling Han said. So, what if she was a great elite of the immortal realm? There would be a day when he too would be able to cultivate to that level. You promise? Hunyo asked pitifully. Ling Han nodded and said with extreme caution, I promise. All the female generals looked at Ling Han with disdainful gazes. This brat had no idea how powerful the force they belonged to was. Even if you cultivated into a corpse, you would still be far from it. In this lifetime, you would never be able to set foot on their territory. Don't even think about it. All right, Niu agreed unwillingly and slowly walked towards the old woman in cyan. She tilted her head and said, Niu wants to take some people with her, or else Niu will definitely be very, very disobedient. The old woman in cyan laughed loudly and said, as long as it's not this brat, there's no problem. Only then was Niu happy. Pointing at Hellion Sun Shui, she said, take this woman with no chest with you. She paused, then pointed at the Lunar King and said, and this big bewitching girl, Niu doesn't feel at ease. Then she pointed at Yi Shuang Shuang. And this little bewitching girl, Niu doesn't feel at ease either. Her jealousy flared, and even Lu Yutong, Li Sichan, and Zhu Xian were named by her, and even Ling Jianshui. Ling Han couldn't help but have a strange expression. Niu really planned to make him a loner. However, this force was definitely a supreme existence in the realm of immortals. To be able to enter the realm of immortals with Niu's care was actually a great opportunity. Lord Niu, take Uncle Rabbit, take Uncle Rabbit's. Rabbit was extremely proactive. Now that Niu had become some young empress of the realm of immortals, her future was extremely bright, and Uncle Rabbit obviously wanted to hitch a ride with her. Niu, however, snorted and said, you accompany Ling Han, and take good care of Niu's Ling Han. Don't let him be bored, and more importantly, don't let him get hurt, or else Niu will eat you. Rabbit lamented the heavens and the earth. What sin had it committed to actually be abandoned? Ling Han didn't plan to persuade Niu to change her mind. That was fine. He'd let the people around him follow Niu. Firstly, they could obtain better cultivation resources and environment, and secondly, it was safer than staying by his side. Apart from the great enemy of the Rock Palace, the existence that caused the fall of the former empress. But for the old woman in cyan and the others, presumably, the Rock Palace should be very powerful and have deep roots. Otherwise, with the death of the empress, how could they not be destroyed? Ling Han nodded and released the people in the Black Tower, letting them board the ship. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 644. Yao Huiyu was extremely pained. His Zhu Xian heir actually looked like this? When they were in the North region, Zhu Xian'er's figure and the temperament she exuded were enough to enchant him, and he willingly prostrated himself at her feet. But now that he had truly seen her face, it was as if a knife had cut into his heart. This contrast was too great. His first love turned into bubbles, just like that. Ling Han laughed loudly, hooked his arm around Yao Huiyu's shoulder, and said, Little Yao, whether we fight to the death tomorrow, that's a matter for tomorrow. Thank you for today. Come, let's drink. We won't return until we're drunk. A person like Yao Huiyu, who had self-control, would naturally not be willing to get drunk, but right now, he only wanted to get drunk to resolve all his grievances. He sat down without a word and did not refuse anyone. He poured cup after cup of wine into his mouth and very quickly collapsed onto the floor, snoring loudly. So bad at drinking, the Rain Emperor said with a smile. Ling Han said meaningfully, alcohol enters the heart of sorrow, and it's easier to get drunk. When Yao Huiyu woke up the next day, he found himself lying alone on a rock. Once he got up, he felt a swelling pain in his head. The aftereffects of a hangover had acted up. He held his head, thinking that he definitely wouldn't get drunk again in the future. He looked up at the sky and couldn't help but reveal a self-mocking smile. Previously, he was at her beck and call, ingratiating himself with Zhu Xian'er. Actually, did he really fall in love with her? He hadn't even seen her face, so how could there be true feelings? However, his feelings were deceiving him, imagining her as an exceptional beauty, so he would admire her wholeheartedly, and now, his dream was shattered. From now on, he could put all his thoughts on martial art. Yao Huiyu's thoughts were clear, and his face instantly revealed an expression of ecstasy because he touched the barrier of 30 flashes of sword qi. As expected, the violent fluctuation of emotions had a great impact on the control of qi. Previously, he cultivated diligently, but to no avail. I want to become the #1 in the younger generation, he said with lofty sentiments, completely forgetting his disappointment in love. The greatest genius obviously had unparalleled self-control. Ling Han waited for another 5 days, but Ken Yi still hadn't seen that disciple from the Heaven's Sword sect. Instead, a piece of news arrived. There was an earthquake at the Great Bright Mountain, and it seemed like an incredible treasure had been born. Lightning soared into the sky, illuminating the starry sky. Because of this, many people had already set off towards the Daming Mountain. In any case, it was within the Flying Blossom County, and it would only take them a day or two to get there. In order to wait for Ken Yi, Ling Han could only restrain himself. Moreover, the flickering of lightning didn't mean that a precious treasure was truly born. Previously, when he guided lightning into his body and cultivated the thunderclap ninth heaven, didn't he also guide lightning to strike for a day and a night? Perhaps this was a person who cultivated a lightning-type cultivation method and was taking a crucial step. Ling Han waited patiently, but the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing had already set off. The Rain Emperor said that if there really were any treasures of the lightning element there, he would definitely bring them back for Ling Han so that he could truly form a body of lightning. With the sincerity of the two brothers, Ling Han couldn't say no and could only let them leave. However, Ling Han indeed wanted to form a body of lightning. Now, he was only using the power of lightning to speed up his body, but if he could transform his body into lightning, his speed could be increased by a level, and he would be able to catch up to Hunyao. The Great Bright Mountain. Isn't that one of the 21 mountain ranges suspected to be the Boundless Mountains? Zhu Xian'er asked Ling Han after learning about it. Ling Han nodded and said, "It can't be such a coincidence, right? The Clear Harmony Palace Hall is really there." It wasn't impossible because Zi Shuexian cultivated the power of lightning, and the Great Bright Mountain just so happened to have lightning soaring into the sky. It was too much of a coincidence. Wait for another day. If there's still no news from Ken Yi, we'll set off. Ling Han decided to go. However, Ken Yi came that night and brought with him a piece of bad news. That Heaven's Sword sect's true disciple actually didn't manage to bring back the ancient map. He said that the sect controlled it very strictly and treated it like the best martial art cultivation technique, and definitely wouldn't allow outsiders to see it. Putting aside the fact that outsiders couldn't see it, even if someone from their own sect wanted to see it, they would have to reach a certain cultivation level, such as Heaven Tier, or an outstanding disciple like Yao Huiyu.
Fuck.
Ling Han couldn't help but swear. It was just a map. Was it so precious? It shouldn't be possible that the Heaven's Sword sect was afraid that they discover some secret left behind by Zi Shuexian. How would they know that Zi Shuexian had left behind some last words? Moreover, so many years had passed. Perhaps this place had already been buried underground forever, or had been completely destroyed. These 5 great sects were abnormal. Ling Han didn't hesitate any longer, and brought Zhu Xian'er and Hunyao with him towards the Great Bright Mountains. Rabbit naturally followed, eating 1,000-year-old ginseng like it was a carrot all day long, and even boasted shamelessly that this was interest. When Ling Han returned 2 dragon blood tyrant ginseng to it, then he wouldn't have to pay it interest. The consequence of this cheap mouth was naturally being bitten by Hunyao, making it wail in pain, but it didn't dare to do so again and again. How could the word cheap be enough? They talked and laughed along the way, and very soon, they arrived at the Great Bright Mountains. Flying Blossom County wasn't the largest county in the Middle State, but it was definitely the county with the most mountain ranges. This Great Bright Mountains was also a large mountain range that stretched for several hundred miles, and was shockingly large. This place was filled with a primitive aura, and terrifying demonic beasts ran amok. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to enter too deeply, as one careless mistake would cost them their lives. Ling Han gazed into the distance. The trees here were all as tall as treasured swords, and their average height was more than 300 meters. They stood upright, and there were very few branches. Just by looking at them, they gave off a somber feeling. And on the east side of the mountain range, there was indeed a ball of lightning that soared into the sky. It surged and scuttled, spreading throughout the entire mountain peak. "Let's go." Ling Han and the others flew in that direction. Now that even Zhu Xian'er had broken through to the flower blossom tier, the strength of their team could be said to be quite formidable. They very soon arrived at the foot of the mountain peak and saw that there were occasional flashes of lightning halfway up the mountain. This was the source of the lightning in this place, and it affected the entire mountaintop, making people not dare to approach. Ling Han revealed a shocked expression and blurted out, "Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder." You brat actually know about Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder too," Rabbit said in surprise, appearing to be very strange. "This is one of the 10 great ancient absolute thunders." "What 10 great ancient absolute thunders?" Zhu Xian'er asked curiously. Rabbit went crazy when people came, and with someone supporting it, it instantly had the urge to show off, but unexpectedly received a fierce glare from Hunyao. In the end, it rubbed its, but that was covered with wounds that hadn't healed yet, not daring to act lowly anymore, and said, "There are spirits in heaven and earth. Even this mountain, this water, this stone, this fire, all have the possibility of developing intelligence and forming a special life." "Oh, then isn't that the spirit of fire spirit, the spirit of stone, and the spirit of water?" Zhu Xian'er came to a realization and suddenly clapped her hands, saying, "Could it be that there's a spirit of thunder here?" Ling Han nodded and said, "That should be the case, and it's also an impressive guy." Chapter 645. How impressive is it? Zhu Xian'er asked again. Ling Han pondered for a moment, then said with a serious expression, "Even among the living beings nurtured by heaven and earth, there are still differences in strength. If the thunder spirits are ranked according to their strength, then the Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder can be ranked in the top 10. Then what rank can the Boulder Man and Strange Fire rank?" Zhu Xian'er was curious. Only with comparison could she have a clear understanding. Ling Han compared and said, "Small Stone can at most squeeze into the top 100. Strange Fire might not even be in the top 100, but after being tempered, it should be able to enter the top 100 now." Zhu Xian'er was moved. It was so fierce just squeezing into the top 100, so how powerful would the top 10 be? Just like the North Region's Prodigy Roll, the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier could squeeze into the top 100, but what were the top 10? The difference between the Spiritual Pedestal tier wasn't just a little bit. In that case, this Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder was terrifying. Ling Han thought carefully and said, "The power of lightning is leaking out uncontrollably, which means that the lightning spirit is about to be born. If it really becomes an existence with consciousness, I'm afraid no one will be able to obtain it." Not to mention how terrifying such a thunder spirit's battle prowess was, just in terms of speed, how many people could catch up. Ling Han was only in the flower blossom tier, but his speed could rival those in the deity transformation tier. The thunder spirit was a pure body of lightning, so how fast could its speed be? Perhaps only Shattering Void tier elites could capture it. Wait, Ling Han was startled. Zi Shuexian had definitely been in the Shattering Void tier all those years ago, so could this thunder spirit have been captured by her and suppressed here all this while? 10,000 years had passed, and the restriction had begun to weaken. Added with the change in the environment caused by the earthquake, which further weakened the restriction, Thunder Snow finally broke free and began the final step of transformation. Could this really be the boundless mountain of the past? Ling Han was tempted. He still couldn't transform his body into lightning, but if he could refine the Heaven Cloud Purple Lightning, he would definitely be able to cultivate the Thunderclap 9th Heaven to great accomplishment, or at least small accomplishment. He would truly be able to cultivate it, and not be a dabbler like he was now. He was even a little excited to the point that his body was trembling. If that time really came, how terrifying would his battle prowess be? Perhaps he would really be able to completely surpass a major tier in battle. A flower blossom tier cultivator rivaling a deity transformation tier cultivator. This was truly like a myth. I'm only one step away from Body of Diamond, and also one step away from 30 flashes of Sword Chi. If I obtain this Heaven Cloud Purple Lightning and temper it, who knows, I might be able to attain Body of Diamond and form 30 flashes of Sword Chi. At that time, Condensing Ray, forming a spiritual infant, and refining my body with lightning would all be done in one go. Then, once I advance into the spiritual infant tier, I should be able to battle top-notch deity transformation tier elites. This was really inconceivable. Those who could surpass 5 stars in battle could be considered a super genius, and those who could surpass 10 stars would be at the level of heaven-defying geniuses like the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. But if Ling Han used his full battle prowess, he could now surpass 20 stars in battle. Of course, this was taking into account the 3 mystical powers, the Demon Birth Sword, the mysterious 3000, and the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Without any one of them, his battle prowess would drop by a few stars. However, if he could really fuse with this strange lightning, he would be able to possess battle prowess of over 20 stars with only his 3 great mystical powers unarmed. And this is enough to suppress that fierce woman, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Ling Han mumbled. No matter what, he was a male chauvinist, and was absolutely unwilling to be suppressed by the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. However, I don't know what level this fierce woman is at now. Even if she is only the lowest level of a mortal spirit, I'm afraid she could suppress me with a single finger. Sigh. The path of suppressing this evil daughter-in-law is a long one, and I still have to search high and low. Ling Han was absent-minded for a while, then snapped his fingers and said, "Xian Er, you'd better stay here for now." Zhu Xian Er understood and nodded. She deliberately pretended that she wanted to whisper some secrets to Ling Han and pulled him into the dense forest. When Ling Han released his divine sense to take her into the Black Tower, she first kissed Ling Han on the cheek, and only then did she enter into the Black Tower. This girl. Ling Han shook his head. He had occasionally mentioned the matter of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to Zhu Xian'er, and she must have guessed that his absent-mindedness earlier was because he was thinking of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Zhu Xian'er's intelligence lay in the fact that she was obviously jealous, yet treated Ling Han with an even gentler attitude, making Ling Han also firmly remember her in his heart. Women are indeed transformed from enchantresses, always wanting to steal your heart, Ling Han said ruefully as he walked out of the forest. Niu is not transformed from an enchantress, Hu Niu said seriously with her hands on her hips. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly, then said to the rabbit, "Ruffian rabbit, the heaven cloud purple lightning is about to appear ahead, and the power of lightning is extremely dangerous. Do you still want to follow? If you die, I can only plant 2 dragon blood tyrant ginseng on your grave next year. Go, go, go. Uncle Rabbit will live for 100 years. Definitely not a short-lived rabbit." The rabbit brushed its little claws. "Aren't you already a few hundred years old?" Hu Niu asked curiously. "A very long life." The rabbit was depressed and said, "Uncle Rabbit said wrong. Can I live 10,000 years? Then you take care of your own life and death, and bear the consequences," Ling Han said with a smile. He and Hu Niu both cultivated the thunderclap 9th heaven and had considerable affinity with the power of lightning, far more resistant to the power of lightning than normal people. Besides, didn't he still have the Black Tower? The rabbit was disdainful. Didn't they know that the attribute of rabbits was to run fast? When it came to escaping, if Uncle Rabbit said second, who would dare say first? 2 people and 1 rabbit advanced, and the power of lightning enveloped the entire mountain peak. The purple lightning was extremely terrifying, darting everywhere and hitting trees and rocks, which all turned into ashes with Pa Ling Han stretched out a finger, and Z, absorbing the overflowing power of lightning. The 5 elements Chaos Lotus swayed, and the lotus root shone, guiding the power of lightning to flow throughout Ling Han's body, making his physique further transform towards a body of lightning. This power of lightning was insignificant, and the transformation was naturally ridiculously slow. However, Ling Han didn't mind. This could at most be considered an appetizer, and the main course was the heaven cloud purple lightning. As long as it didn't truly transform into a lightning spirit, then it could be eaten, but if it succeeded, then he'd better run. Hu Niu was even more freakish than Ling Han. She already had a body of lightning, and the power of lightning rushed into her body, making her giggle endlessly, as if she was being tickled. Different people had different fates. He obviously also cultivated the thunderclap ninth heaven, but why was the difference so great? Ling Han sighed, extremely envious of Hunyo. Don't be envious. This girl's ancestor was definitely a supreme almighty being of the divine realm, with a bloodline inheritance and shocking abilities. Even Uncle Rabbit has to concede defeat, the rabbit said on the side. Ling Han gave an O and said, "You think Hunyo's ancestor was some almighty being of the divine realm? Otherwise, tell Uncle Rabbit, how could there be someone who ascended to the flower blossom tier at 7 or 8 years old?" The rabbit said with certainty. Ling Han picked up the rabbit and said, "Seems like you understand the divine realm quite well. Tell me, how many levels are there among the divine beings?" Chapter 646. The rabbit rolled its eyes at Ling Han and said, "You think Uncle Rabbit is a god? How would I know without going to the divine realm?" "Then how do you know that Hunyo's ancestor is a supreme being of the divine realm?" Ling Han asked. "Huske, if not a supreme being, how could she be so freakish?" The rabbit snorted. Ling Han shook his head, feeling that it wasn't Hunyo's ancestor that was awesome, but she herself was awesome. The spirit base in her dantian was too terrifying. At least until now, Ling Han didn't feel a stronger pressure from others. Not in his previous life, and not in this life. Shattering void tier elites like Foam Puyun and the giant silver spider, existences at the peak of humanity couldn't even compare to a glance from that woman. The longer time passed, and the higher the tier, the more fearful Ling Han was of that human-shaped spirit base, feeling it more and more unfathomable. Ling Han looked at the cheerful Hunyo, and only had one wish in his heart. Hunyo could be so free forever. As they advanced halfway up the mountain, the power of lightning became stronger and stronger, and the rabbit had to circulate origin power to resist. Although it was a beast and had a strong physique, it couldn't withstand the violent bombardment of the power of lightning. Not to mention anything else, it wouldn't do it even if its snow-white rabbit fur was burnt. Ling Han and Hunyo, on the other hand, were like fish in water. Though the power of lightning here was strong, it was not violent and could be easily absorbed. It was just like lightning spirit chi, except that it was even denser and had almost materialized. They obviously weren't the first to come here. Many people were in the process of climbing, and all opened origin power shields, each step difficult. No one dared to fly. The power of lightning in the sky was too violent, like the wrath of the 9 heavens. Perhaps only deity transformation tier elites were qualified to force their way through, or else they could only take one step at a time and walk obediently on the ground. The people ahead walked slower and slower. After all, not many people had a thunder spirit base and had to use their own origin power to resist. This not only consumed origin power, but also physical strength. For those who didn't cultivate body arts, they could only take a few steps and rest. Ling Han quickly stopped in his tracks because a narrow path had appeared in front of him. However, someone had actually sat down and rested in this small path. If he wanted to cross over his head, he would inevitably be bombarded by the power of lightning, which was extremely dangerous. "Hey, please take a few more steps forward or take a few steps back. Don't block the only way," Ling Han said. That was a man in his 30s. He was in the high level of the spiritual infant tier, possibly even reaching the peak of the spiritual infant tier. Though his chi and blood were exuberant, he was not as young as he appeared. After all, after breaking through to the flower blossom tier, the rate at which martial artists aged slowed down. Spiritual infant tier warriors had a lifespan of 500 years, and as long as one's true age was below 200 years old, it would be no different from being in their 30s. The man cast a sidelong glance at Ling Han and Hunyo, and could not help but reveal a look of disdain. He said disdainfully, "Mere flower blossom tier juniors dare to ask me to make way? TSK, TSK, TSK. You're going to be in deep trouble. Uncle Rabbit can guarantee you with my integrity." Rabbit immediately gloated. "Demon, demon rabbit." The man cried out in alarm. This rabbit could actually speak the human language. "Make way." Ling Han's expression also turned cold. The man no longer cared about the fact that the rabbit could speak the human language and stared at Ling Han again. He sneered and said, "You dare speak to me like this? Do you think you're tired of living?" "Uncle Rabbit, you're the one who thinks you're tired of living." The rabbit kept interrupting. Ling Han said indifferently, "As the saying goes, a good dog doesn't block the way." "Then I can only send a mangy dog like you flying with a kick."
"How dare you?"
The man was furious and actually made the first move. With a wave of his hand, a black whip was already lashed out, coiling towards Ling Han's neck. He revealed a ruthless expression. As long as he was coiled by his whip, the terrifying origin power would burst forth, and he could instantly pluck off the other's head. Ling Han's gaze also shot out a cold light. Not only did this person block the way, he attacked to take his life. Truly vicious. Towards this kind of person, there was naturally no need to be merciful. Ling Han also made a move. Lightning twined around his hand, crackling as he grabbed the long whip with one move. Z. The power of lightning passed through the long whip and instantly passed towards the other.
"Ah!"
The man cried out in shock. The power of lightning passed through, causing his entire right arm to go numb and his 5 fingers to lose all feeling. He couldn't help but loosen his hand, and the whip fell. He hurriedly extended his left hand, wanting to grab the whip again. This was forged from flying cloud gold thread wrapped around blackwood vines, and was incomparably precious. But the long whip moved like a spirit snake, shooting rapidly towards Ling Han's direction, and had already landed in his hand. "Return it to me," the man cried out. Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, "Is there something wrong with your brain? Brat, are you seeking your own death?" The man said darkly, "You speak as if you didn't want to kill me just now, and were just playing with me." Ling Han shook his head and brandished the long whip in the direction of the man. Because the body of the whip was entwined with metal, it became an excellent conductor for the power of lightning. Z. The whole whip turned white, densely interwoven with lightning, and ancient patterns flashed.
"Fuck!"
The man spat. This place was full of the power of lightning, which also doubled the battle prowess of Thunder Attribute martial artists, and a single strike could draw upon the power of lightning in the surroundings to amplify. Flower Blossom tier warriors could draw upon the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to amplify their attacks, but this place became a sea of lightning. Martial artists of the 5 elements couldn't borrow the corresponding spiritual chi and could only rely on their own power to battle, which naturally greatly affected their battle prowess. However, for Thunder Attribute martial artists, this place was equivalent to a paradise. The man could only flee backwards to avoid the strike. Ling Han followed up and lashed out with another whip. His battle prowess reached the peak of the spiritual infant tier, and added with the amplification of the power of lightning here, he naturally crushed any spiritual infant tier warrior, unless the other also had a Thunder Attribute spirit base. How would the man resist him? Ling Han advanced step by step, and the man retreated step by step. The long whip lashed out with pa-pa-pa sounds, and the power of lightning interweaved, extremely terrifying. The man's head was covered in cold sweat. The power of lightning here was terrifying, and it was like stepping into a swamp. Every step was difficult. One had to resist the turbulency of lightning, which was extremely taxing on both origin power and physical strength, so one would need to rest after walking for a while. But now, a whip was lashing madly on his head, not giving him any time to breathe at all. He could only run forward like a mad dog. He was as pathetic as one could imagine. Damn it, damn it. The man was extremely angry and humiliated. Brat, don't go too far. I'm a member of the Iron Tree Silver Flower Leaf family, and the ancestor is a heaven-tier elite, respected by the whole world. Oh, I'm so scared. I can only kill you to avoid future trouble, Ling Han said with a smile, and the whip in his hand lashed out even more urgently. The man let out a shameful howl. As he walked, he was seen by many people in his pathetic state, and those pairs of strange gazes made him feel extremely ashamed and resentful. Chapter 647. They're going to fight, they're going to fight. The members of the Liu clan were all excited. They naturally all hoped that Ling Han would be defeated. Ling Han smiled casually and stepped into the air. There seemed to be an invisible flight of stairs in the sky, allowing him to ascend step by step until he arrived in the vast skies. On account of your seniority, I'll let you have 3 moves. He crooked his finger. Arrogant, Man Jing was so righteous that his white hair danced in the wind. He began to burn his qi and blood, deciding to fight with his utmost brilliance. He wanted to defeat this youngster, who didn't know how to be humble in an instant. Although it was indeed very impressive that Ling Han had advanced into the Shattering Void tier at such a young age, he still had to know that there would always be people better than him. His aura continued to increase and reached the battle prowess of 8 stars of Shattering Void tier, matching his cultivation level. Suppress. He flew out and charged towards Ling Han to suppress him. Ling Han neither dodged nor evaded, and allowed his opponent to attack him as he pleased. Paw. He was instantly struck in the chest by a palm. Hiss, this was called letting him have 3 moves? The corners of everyone's mouths twitched, and they practically didn't dare to believe their own eyes. The so-called letting him have a few moves meant that he wouldn't take the initiative to counterattack. What he should block still had to be blocked, and what he should dodge still had to be dodged. It definitely didn't mean that he wouldn't dodge, evade, or parry and forcefully take the blow. Shattering Void tier cultivators didn't die, because if they wanted to flee, there was basically no one who could stop them. But if you acted so recklessly, then Shattering Void tier cultivators would also die very quickly. 1 move and he would be insta-killed, definitely.
Ah.
Yet Man Jing screamed in pain. His arms trembled and showed an inconceivable twist. That was because his bones had been dislocated.
What?
Pa. Man Jing activated his origin power and reset the dislocated bones. His face twitched, and his expression was filled with disbelief. How could this be possible? His opponent had taken the force of his palm strike, and not only was he completely fine, he had even dislocated his own arm. This defense was nature-defying. 2 more moves, Ling Han said calmly. There was absolute silence, and only the sound of heavy breathing and the reverberation of Ling Han's words could be heard. Even the 7 kings were indescribably shocked. This brat's physique seems to have become stronger again. Previously, it was already at the level of level 10 rare metal, then wouldn't it have advanced into godly metal now? Fuck, in this world. Who else could kill him? Forget about killing. Can anyone even hurt him? Man Jingyi's face was filled with bitterness. Even if he could defeat Ling Han, so what? There wasn't the slightest bit of brilliance. How could there be such a freak? It was no wonder that Ling Han would be arranged by the Purple Moon Empire to be in the highest position. Merely based on that defensive power, who would dare to be unconvinced? He took a deep breath. Now, there was no way out. He could only hope that Ling Han's defensive power could not possibly be so awesome all the time so that he could recover a little and at least leave some face. After accumulating for a full 3 breaths, he held back and unleashed a powerful move. Azure River's water flow. Break through 10,000 miles. He drew upon the water element of heaven and earth and turned it into a black river that charged towards Ling Han. Every drop of river water was condensed from pure origin power and was as heavy as a mountain. If this black river hit solidly, then even an elite in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier would be directly killed. Ling Han still stood in the air with his hands behind his back, without any intention of dodging. Hey, you want to take this move head-on? Clear Sun King drew in a cold breath. His battle prowess could definitely kill Man Jingyi in a second, but he definitely didn't dare to take a powerful move from the opponent head-on. With godly metal-level defense, you can be so willful. Heavenly Astral King sighed. Physique was too difficult to cultivate. Although they also had some small accomplishments, they only reached the level of Heaven tier and couldn't cross the final step at all. The Black River struck and heavily hit Ling Han's body, instantly drowning him. Amidst the heavy sound, the Black River poured down, charging towards the heaven-splitting platform, which frightened countless people. Shattering Void Tear, and a powerful move of the 8th layer at that. Even if most Shattering Void Tear elites took it head-on, they would only be insta-killed. Let me. Flame King's figure flashed, and he already appeared in front of the Black River. He stretched out his hand, and hung. Flames rose, instantly burning this Black River into ashes. He originally had battle prowess of 15 stars of Shattering Void Tear, and now, with the supportive power of the nation, his battle prowess soared to 18 stars, so dispelling a powerful move of 8 stars of Shattering Void Tear was naturally a piece of cake. The disaster was resolved, and everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They didn't pay attention to Flame King, for the latter being able to be so powerful was naturally within their expectations. The key was Ling Han, who took this move head-on. Was he heavily injured, or was he completely unscathed like before? The Black River completely dispersed, and Ling Han could be seen standing proudly, the chi and blood all over his body soaring to the skies like a cauldron that could burn the heavens. This freak, Liu Clan's ancestor, shivered. No, he had to immediately apologize to Ling Han. This kind of person was really terrifying, and if he bore a grudge, then the Liu Clan would definitely be done for. Not to mention anything else, and merely in terms of living longer, he still wouldn't be Ling Han's match. There's still one more move, Ling Han said with a smile, full of energy. Everyone came to a sudden realization. It wasn't that Ling Han was arrogant, but rather that he was indeed too strong. With such a physique, not to mention 3 moves, even if it was 300 moves, so what? Man Jingyi immediately gave up. He had already used his strongest move, but still couldn't even harm a single hair on Ling Han's head, so what use would one more move have? No need. I admit defeat, he said, his heart filled with bitterness. In his life, it wasn't that he hadn't been defeated before, but within the same cultivation level, his opponent had forced him to raise his hands and surrender without even using a single move. This was the only time to be able to rush up to the Shattering Void Tier, especially one who had reached the summit a few hundred years ago. What kind of genius was that? Man Jingyi naturally had his own pride, but now he had no choice but to concede to his old age. This era no longer belonged to him. Thank you for letting me win, Ling Han said calmly. He didn't act overbearingly and refused to let Man Jingyi go. Man Jingyi turned around dejectedly and returned to his own seat. However, at this time no one gave him a second look. Instead, all their attention was focused on Ling Han. This was a super new star. What? He's Ling Han, that heaven-grade alchemist. I really never thought that there would actually be such a rare genius in this world. Not only has he reached the pinnacle in alchemy, but he is also so terrifying in martial arts. In the future, he will definitely become one of the rulers of this world. If His Majesty succeeds in splitting open the skies, we will all become subjects of the immortal level. At that time, we will receive the resources of the immortal realm to cultivate, and we may not necessarily lose to him. Exactly. The majority of people were certain of Ling Han's abilities, but there were also some who were narrow-minded and were filled with dissatisfaction towards Ling Han. However, now that Ling Han sat there again, no one had any objections. If you're dissatisfied, then come at me with 3 moves. The Liu clan's ancestor hurriedly led the younger generation over and apologized to Ling Han. Meanwhile, those youngsters finally knew that there was always someone better than them, and all of them broke out in a cold sweat. With Ling Han's current strength, even if he killed them all, would the ancestor dare to have any objections? Chapter 648. Pung, pung, pung. The fierce battle began. Lightning flashed, causing the others to retreat one after another. Only Hunyo was still able to stand where she was. The waves of lightning surged past, but did not affect her in the slightest. How could Zhao Chaoheng possibly dare to let Ling Han have 3 moves? If he did so, he would fall into an absolutely disadvantageous situation. Thus, he could not be bothered with the embarrassment of losing face. His fists rained down on that dragon elephant. Is this the Earth Dragon Sex War Elephant Fist? He was quite knowledgeable and immediately recognized the War Elephant Fist. This was not the Earth Dragon Sex's most powerful technique. There were many disciples who knew it, so it was not strange for Zhao Chaoheng to be able to recognize it. Ling Han did not reply. Since they had already exchanged blows, defeating the other party was the most effective response. Zhao Chaoheng harumphed. Although he no longer dared to underestimate Ling Han, he was not afraid of Ling Han. Brandishing his fists, his combat prowess was not the slightest bit weak, allowing him to fight evenly with Ling Han. His cultivation level was in the 9th layer of the spiritual infant tier, and he had stayed in this cultivation level for a very, very long time, tempering his cultivation level to an incredibly pure level. Therefore, with the advantage of a great realm, he was not the slightest bit weaker than Ling Han. But this made him even more speechless, because his battle prowess should definitely be at the peak of the spiritual infant tier, but now, a flower blossom tier cultivator was able to match him, which shocked him. It was practically inconceivable. "Junior, are you a disciple of the Earth Dragon sect?" he barked. If he was, then he just wanted to say a few words of courtesy. He didn't want to continue fighting. After all, the Earth Dragon sect was even more powerful than a Deva-level power. So, what if Li Yuanmiang was beaten up so badly? No, Ling Han said with a smile. Guess again. Guess your sister. Zhao Chaoheng didn't waste any more words, only continuing to send out punches. He planned to stop the battle only after he had obtained an absolute advantage. This way, he wouldn't offend Ling Han, and he would also be able to preserve his face. As for Li Yuanmingko, it had nothing to do with him in the first place. It was already good enough that he was willing to help. The two of them fought, and it was difficult to determine the victor. Zhao Chaoheng wanted to end the battle quickly, so he immediately took out a long saber, the blade of which was densely covered with vein-like patterns. This was the spirit artifact that he had cultivated with his life. It was originally a rank 7 refined weapon, but after dozens of years of nurturing, it had now been promoted to a spirit artifact. This was a spirit weapon that he had nurtured himself. Even if the two spirit weapons were exactly the same, in his hands, this blue thunder saber would be able to unleash even greater power. It was very simple. It was most suitable for him. Ling Han couldn't help but reveal a strange smile. You really want to compete with me in spirit artifacts? With the saber in hand, Zhao Chaoheng's confidence soared. It was also a level 7 spirit artifact, but this green thunder saber of his could unleash 100%, or even 120% of its power. If he were to use a spirit weapon that didn't belong to him, he would only be able to display 60 to 70% of its power at most. Ling Han's right hand shook, and the demon birth sword was already unleashed. Wung, wung, wung. 3 vein-like patterns lit up, and instantly, a terrifying murderous aura circulated. This was a level 10 spirit tool, and even if Ling Han couldn't unleash its full power, its level was there for all to see, so how could it be inferior to a level 7 spirit tool? What spirit tool is this? Zhao Chaoheng's expression changed in shock. As a descendant of a heaven-tier clan, his judgment naturally wouldn't be bad, and he instantly saw the extraordinariness of the demon birth sword. Do you still want to fight? Ling Han shook the sword and said with a smile, Perhaps that saber of yours will be cut in half by me. Zhao Chaoheng immediately looked hesitant. If Ling Han was only a normal flower blossom tier cultivator, then even if he wielded a level 10 spirit tool, he wouldn't be afraid, because he wouldn't even be touched by the latter's sword. However, Ling Han's battle prowess was enough to match his, and that would be troublesome. The blue thunder saber was a treasured saber that he had nurtured for several tens of years. Even if it was only a small scratch, his heart would ache. No more fighting. He decided that safety was the first priority. After all, he didn't have any deep friendship with Li Yuanming. However, after some thought, he still said, Young man, Li Yuanming is a descendant of the Li clan, and the ancestor of the Li clan is even a heaven-tier cultivator. It's best that you don't go overboard. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I won't go overboard. I only want to kill him. Zhao Chaoheng's expression stiffened. If this wasn't going overboard, then what was? However, he had already done what he could and should have done, so there was absolutely no reason for him to fight to the death with Ling Han for the sake of Li Yuanming. After all, he wasn't his brother-in-law. Li Yuanming was forced to retreat continuously and suddenly turned around to run. He didn't want to die at all. Ling Han didn't chase after him and merely drew out the sunset bow and knocked an arrow. Shio, the sharp arrow shot out, carrying lightning and instantly accelerating to the extreme. Pooh! It shot into Li Yuanming's heart from the back, and with a pu, it shot out again, stabbing into the hard mountain rock. Li Yuanming staggered a few more steps before collapsing onto the ground with a loud bang. Fresh blood seeped out, forming a pool of blood under his body. His face was filled with regret. There wasn't any mortal enmity between the two of them, and he was merely blocking the way. If he hadn't been so rude and unreasonable and then used his identity as a member of the Li clan to try and take Ling Han's life, would there be such an outcome? However, it was useless no matter how much he regretted it. His eyes were wide open in unwillingness, but there was no longer any anger. Ling Han walked over and put away the sharp arrow. This was forged from level 7 rare metal, and if one arrow had to be used up for each shot, probably only the wealth of a shattering void tier elite would be able to support it. Zhao Chaoheng looked at Ling Han's back and suddenly said, Young man, how should I address you? Ling Han turned around to look at him and said, Ling Han. Ling Han. Zhao Chaoheng nodded and said, I will remember this name. Young man, you are indeed very strong. Even if I have cultivated for a few dozen more years than you, and am a whole tier higher than you in terms of cultivation level, I can only fight you to a draw. However, there are really too many geniuses in this generation. My Zhao clan has a super genius named Ziyuan. He is only 23 years old this year, and is already in the second layer of the spiritual infant tier. His battle prowess is even stronger than mine. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, If there's a chance, I can spar with him. Zhao Chaoheng nodded, and at the same time, felt incredibly rueful. His talent and strength could be ranked among the top in any period of 10,000 years, but this era ushered in a super flourishing age of martial art, as if it was about to release all the accumulation of 10,000 years. Not only did the strength of the entire martial art industry see a great increase, the younger generation also welcomed the blossoming of 100 flowers. Geniuses from all walks of life appeared frequently, and they easily trampled on the older generation. He was born at the wrong time. How good would it be if he could be born 50 years later? Ling Han continued to advance. Hunyo held his hand and ate snacks as she did so. Meanwhile, Rabbit followed on the other side. It had already felt a great pressure, and the power of lightning was becoming more and more terrifying. We're almost there. Ling Han looked ahead and revealed an expression of joy. The heaven cloud purple lightning was just ahead, and after fusing with it, he would be able to cultivate a true body of lightning. Ahead, a crowd appeared, and there was also a gigantic pool of lightning. Chapter 649. A Beautiful Romance. This pool of lightning was at least 30 meters in circumference, and at the other end was a cave. Half of the cave entrance had collapsed, giving off a kind of shabby feeling. The pool of lightning surged, rolling with terrifying divine lightning, and the scene was astonishing. There were many people watching in the surroundings, and some even wanted to barge in and enter that cave, but they immediately gave up after a try. They were bombarded by lightning until their bodies were covered in scorch marks, looking extremely miserable. Ling Han said, The power of this pool of lightning is most likely at the deity transformation tier. Although the current younger generation was rising very fiercely, even geniuses like Small Saber King and Lang Yatian, who could be classified as the young generation, hadn't crossed into the deity transformation tier, let alone others. However, it didn't matter if their tier wasn't up to par, they could use treasures to make up for it. Ling Han saw someone take out an umbrella, open it, and enter the pool of lightning. The lightning bombarded, but this umbrella emitted a bright light, turning into a shield that blocked all the lightning. It was a woman, beautiful and moving, with a graceful figure. Stepping on the lightning waves, she was as elegant as a fairy, enchanting people. Guangyang Sex Wenren Qian. What? I've never heard of her. Hee. Fairy Wenren is very low-key, but her talent is astonishing, and her strength is extremely powerful. Even she is as beautiful as a fairy, not inferior to the Wang clan's Pearl or the Hu clan's Beauty. Whether she's strong or not is still unknown, but she's really pretty. Hee. You can have her if you're pretty. Fairy Wenren said that as long as it's a battle of the same tier, or a battle of the same age, a man who can defeat her is qualified to be her future husband. Really? Of course it's true. However, she didn't say that if you win, you'll definitely be able to marry her, just that you have this qualification. Even so, many people were eager to give it a try. This Wenren Qian was really so beautiful that it made people's hearts tremble. Once they closed their eyes, all they could see was her graceful figure, the absolutely beautiful and elegant scene of her stepping on the lightning pool. It couldn't be erased at all. I advise you all to give up. Fairy Wenren has already been taken by Jia Ming. Unless you think you can compete with Jia Ming, otherwise, you'd better stop worrying. Jia Ming. Hearing this name, many people revealed astonished expressions. This was the most talented genius that had obtained the qualification to directly enter the Restore Heaven Academy, and he had only made a name for himself in the last 2 years. Previously, he had been painstakingly cultivating in the depths of the savage mountains, fighting demonic beasts, and had never appeared in the world. It was precisely because of this that Jia Ming's murderous nature was exceedingly great. His attacks were cruel, and he never knew how to show mercy. In the 2 years since he'd returned, it was unknown how many geniuses had died at his hands, and some were even disciples of great clans and powers, yet he'd always been safe and sound. Jia Ming was a disciple of the Earth Dragon sect. Who would dare to touch a disciple of one of the 5 great ancient sects? Moreover, Jia Ming had also killed in a one-on-one battle, which could be said to be rather fair. Which force would dare to suppress him? This was the benefit of having a great background. Otherwise, a person like Jia Ming, who slaughtered without fear, would have long since been secretly slaughtered by the older generation many times over. No one dared to open their mouths and speak nonsense. Jia Ming was a person who would kill and injure people with a single word of disagreement. He had absolutely no scruples, and if he knew that they were lusting after Wenren Qian behind his back, he would hunt them down. He couldn't afford to offend this fiend. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Come, some people have already gone in. The heaven cloud purple thunder should be in the cave, and this pool of lightning is only a bit of power that has overflowed." Rabbit expressed his agreement. "Let's go. Hu Niu pulled Ling Han's hand and walked towards the pool of lightning, completely unconcerned. Ling Han stepped out, but the thunderclap 9th heaven was already in operation, and his body was emitting lightning. He couldn't possibly resist the lightning of the deity transformation tier, but these lightning weren't the attacks of anyone. He used lightning to counter lightning and only hoped to safely pass through, which greatly reduced the difficulty. Unexpectedly, Hu Niu's body turned into a bottomless pit, and when the lightning struck, it was easily absorbed by her, causing Ling Han to stare wide-eyed. This was lightning of the deity transformation tier. Not to mention Ling Han. Even small Saber King would tremble with fear if he came, but Hu Niu, on the other hand, didn't refuse anything and absorbed it cleanly. Seeing this, Rabbit hurriedly jumped over. Behind Hu Niu, a small path appeared in the pool of lightning. It was as if a supreme being had forcefully carved out a safe zone, but as Hu Niu moved further away, this small path was also quickly submerged by lightning and once again became a complete pool of lightning. In the surroundings, everyone couldn't believe it, but their gazes were fixed on Ling Han, obviously thinking that such an action was done by Ling Han. Who would suspect a little girl of only 7 or 8 years old, or a large white rabbit? Under Hunyo's lead, Ling Han quickly passed through the pool of lightning and arrived at the entrance of a cave. Still not full. Hunyo still hadn't had enough, and turned back to look at the pool of lightning behind. Ling Han smiled and said, "Then you can go absorb some more lightning power." "Forget it. Help Nyo's Ling Han find the heaven cloud purple thunder first," Hunyo said very sensibly. This little girl was truly more and more likable. Hee, Nyo is so obedient. Ling Han must marry Nyo in the future. The little girl immediately began to haggle. The two of them walked into the cave, and Rabbit followed behind without any rights, because as long as it walked side by side, it would be bitten by Hunyo, saying that it was in the way, so Uncle Rabbit could only follow behind obediently. On the other hand, it was displeased, thinking that it was a spiritual infant-tier elite, so why did it have to follow behind a flower blossom-tier human brat? The entrance to the cave wasn't big, and it was shabby, but after walking inside for a while, it suddenly opened up and became extremely spacious, and the deeper they went, the bigger the space became. That's... Ling Han's gaze swept over, and his figure had already leaped over. There was a ruin ahead that used to be a building, but now only a foundation was left. There were dilapidated walls all around, and who knew how many years ago it had been? Clear Harmony Palace Hall? Ling Han mumbled. He walked around, and actually found a broken plaque in the ruins. However, there was only one word left on it. Peace. It must be Qinghe Palace Hall. Ling Han was completely certain that this was the Clear Harmony Palace Hall that Zi Shuexian had spoken of. This lightning, this ancient site, this character, there could not be such a coincidence in this world. After 10,000 years, there had indeed been great changes. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh with emotion. If it weren't for the earthquake and the imminent birth of the Thunder Spirit, would he have been able to discover this place? This mountain was very big, and the inside was basically hollowed out. Therefore, the space inside was also very big. This Clear Harmony Hall was not built at the end of the cave, and there was still a lot of space behind it. Ling Han hesitated. Was the thing that Zi Shuexian had left behind actually in the Clear Harmony Palace Hall, or was it in the depths of a cave? That was because Zi Shuexian's message had only contained the words Infinite Boundless Mountain and Clear He Palace, without any detailed explanation. Ling Han thought for a long time and decided to search the ruins of the Clear Harmony Palace Hall. Chapter 650. Since Zi Shuexian mentioned the Clear Harmony Palace Hall, then this should have played a crucial role. Otherwise, Ling Han could very well turn the boundless mountain upside down. For an elite of the flower blossom tier, flattening a mountain was really not a difficult task. Ling Han pushed out a palm, and destructive sword chi swept out. Poo, piu, piu, the bricks on the ground all turned into powder. Hunyo pouted, and with a hoo, she blew out a gust of wind, blowing away all the dust. Ling Han destroyed again, and Hunyo cleaned again. Very soon, the entire ruins of the Clear Harmony Palace Hall no longer existed, and only a rugged mountain rock remained. However, there was one brick that was not bad. Ling Han smiled. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. The thing that Zi Shuexian had left behind might be hidden underneath. He grabbed that brick and lifted it, but discovered that this brick was actually extremely heavy. He could not move it no matter what. He could not help but feel competitive and shouted loudly, "Rise!" Origin power and brute force were unleashed together, exploding with a shocking power. However, what was embarrassing was that the brick still did not move in the slightest, as if it had become one with the mountain rock. Ling Han could not help but feel annoyed, and directly began to destroy the nearby rocks, bypassing this brick. Poo, piu, piu. He destroyed some of the mountain rocks, but soon discovered that he could only dig half a foot into the ground, and could not dig any further. This mountain rock was not the slightest bit inferior to that brick, and at least he could do nothing about it. Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword, and sliced at the brick. This time, there was finally some effect, and a shallow scar appeared on the brick. However, how long would he have to cut until? Ling Han decided to attack, with 10,000 techniques returned to 1. He had now condensed a fake ray and 29 flashes of sword chi combined with 10,000 techniques returned to 1, added with the sharpness of the demon birth sword. The destructive power should be extremely terrifying. Let Niu do it. Hu Niu pounced first, shouting loudly. Damn rock, you actually dare not obediently split open. Niu is very angry. Niu will bite you to pieces. Ka-cha, ka-cha, she bit, and a terrifying thing happened. The rock shattered in response to her teeth. Hu Niu, your teeth have become more powerful again. Ling Han exclaimed. Previously, though Hu Niu's little white teeth were domineering, they were definitely not this shocking. Hee. After absorbing some lightning, Niu has become more powerful, Hu Niu said proudly, and began to chew again. Very soon, she had bitten out a hole the size of a human face on the stone brick, and her whole face was buried in it. No wonder Uncle Rabbit's butt is getting more and more painful. Rabbit couldn't help but touch his butt, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Ling Han swept a glance over it and said, You're also a freak. You've been bitten so many times by Hu Niu, and still haven't lost a piece of flesh. You're definitely the first. That's right. Rabbit couldn't help but be immensely pleased with himself. Lord Rabbit's ancestor was a prodigy of a generation and could be called the emperor among demons, invincible in his era. Under the influence of his bloodline, Lord Rabbit is naturally monstrous. As she spoke, Hu Niu's whole body was buried in the hole that she had bitten out of the stone brick. Then, with a pew, her little feet that were exposed outside suddenly disappeared. Ling Han Niu fell down, Hu Niu said delicately. The little girl only bit out a hole that was about the size of her body, but it didn't matter. After reaching the flower blossom tier, couldn't one's bones be twisted? Ling Han compressed his bones with great power, and instantly, every bone made a chong-chong sound, as if they were beating a drum. It couldn't be helped. He cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, and the toughness of his bones was equivalent to rare metal of the same level. It was still a bit difficult to make them change shape. He elongated his body and became thinner, then slid down the hole that Hu Niu had bitten out. Rabbit had a slender figure, and had long since jumped down. Out of Ling Han's expectations, he had thought that there was a secret chamber below, leaving behind Zi Shuexian's belongings all those years ago, but who would have thought that it was actually a passageway? It was pitch black ahead, and he didn't know where it led. Really, isn't it just leaving behind some letters and things like that? Do you have to make it so complicated? Ling Han ridiculed as he advanced along the passageway. He looked carefully and saw that the walls on all 4 sides of the passageway, as well as the bottom, all had vein-like patterns. They were of an extremely high level, at least surpassing the level of his last life. This should have been set up by Zi Shuexian after she advanced into the shattering void tier. No wonder I couldn't destroy the mountain rock previously. It was refined by a great elite of the shattering void tier, so how could it be something that I can destroy now? However, Hu Niu's teeth are really getting more and more powerful, Ling Han sighed ruefully. The little girl's special ability was continuously being displayed, and it was becoming more and more powerful. In the past, her stomach was like a bottomless pit, and that was only eating some food, and there was still an end to it. But now, she could even easily absorb the power of lightning on the level of the deity transformation tier. In the past, her teeth were sharp, and she could bite out the destructive power of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier when she was in the spiritual pedestal tier, but that was only a gap of 1 tier. But now, she could even bite through a cave abode set up by a great elite of the shattering void tier. Even if it had been over 10,000 years, and the effect was completely incomparable to what it had been in the past, Ling Han had expended so much effort to slash out a crack. With such a comparison, Hu Niu's freakishness could be seen. Yet Ling Han was worried. The little girl was getting stronger and stronger. Could it be because that human-shaped spirit base in his dantian had awakened? He completely didn't think that it was a spirit base, but rather a spiritual body that possessed its own consciousness. Just thinking about how Hunyo could one day suddenly become another person and become a complete stranger made Ling Han shudder with fear, and even more pained. Hunyo sniffed with her little nose, clapped her hands, and said, Ling Han, there's a fragrant smell ahead." Ling Han smiled and forcibly dispelled his worries. He caught up with her with large strides and said, "Your nose is really sharp." "That's right, Nyo is the most amazing." The passageway soon came to an end, and a wall appeared in front of them. It was very wide and very tall, and the wall was divided into countless small squares. On each small square was painted a human face. There were men and women, old and young, and there were as many as 999 of them. And on the side of the wall, there was a small pool of lightning. A lotus actually grew out of the pool of lightning. The lotus had already borne fruit, but what it nurtured was not a lotus head, but a round fruit the size of a palm, which was currently flashing and emitting a purple light. The fragrance was emitted from that fruit. This pool of lightning was almost dried up, and one could clearly see the roots of the lotus rooted in the bottom of the pool of lightning, each root showing a purplish-red color. "Heaven cloud purple thunder," Ling Han exclaimed. As expected, the heaven cloud purple thunder had evolved over a long period of time and now had reached the crucial moment of transforming into a spirit. The fruit that the lotus bore was the thunder spirit. As long as it matured, the fruit would open and the thunder spirit would be born. From then on, it would be free and unfettered between heaven and earth, becoming a true living being. But now, the thunder spirit had formed a fruit of Tao, and it was precisely the time when its defense was at its weakest. Plucking it and consuming it would allow one to obtain the fortune of heaven and earth, and obtain unimaginable benefits. This was born from heaven and earth, and the nourishment was unimaginable. Even an elite of the shattering void tier would be tempted. Ling Han was also tempted, and temporarily forgot about the matter of that wall, focusing only on that thunder lotus. Pung, 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 but the sound of footsteps was heard from behind. Chapter 651. To be honest, even if Ling Han did not parry this spear strike, he would be fine even if he took it head-on. But before he had the confidence to kill Ao Jian, he did not want to expose the secret that his physique was as tough as godly metal. If Ao Jian knew about this, would Ao Jian still fight him? What a joke. Facing an opponent that could never be killed or even wounded, who would have the thought to continue fighting? Ling Han was waiting for a chance, or rather, creating a chance to let Ao Jian think that he had grasped a flaw and delivered a fatal blow. Thus, his own weakness would also be exposed, allowing him to counterattack. The two of them were evenly matched, so if you did not give me a chance to hit, how could I give it to you? For elites at their level, it was impossible that they would not hold back with every attack they delivered. They had to leave a way out for themselves. Thus, even if their attack missed, they would still have energy left over to parry and dodge. Ling Han wanted to let Ao Jian think that the attack that Ao Jian delivered could severely wound him, or even kill him. Only then would Ao Jian not hold back and explode with his full strength. Once that was the case, then after his strongest attack, his own defense would also fall to rock bottom, and that would be the time for Ling Han to counterattack. And now, Ao Jian thought that he had grasped this kind of opportunity. Ling Han did not reveal any obvious flaws. This could not be hidden from a genius like Ao Jian at all, allowing the latter to easily see through this trap. Thus, after painstakingly planning, he revealed a careless flaw, and after a few consecutive attacks, he continuously enlarged this flaw, giving Ao Jian a reason to deliver a full-strength attack. The silver spear pierced through the air, and the true dragon roared. This was an absolutely powerful attack. Even if it was Ma Duo Bao who took this attack head-on, he would only be left with a grievance. The attack hit. Ao Jian immediately looked delighted. No matter how freakish you were, so what? If you were hit by this attack of his, only death awaited you. Pung. The tip of the spear pierced Ling Han's chest. The true dragon wreaked havoc, wanting to pierce through Ling Han's chest and shatter his heart. However, the clothes on Ling Han's chest were torn, but his skin exuded a jade-like luster, undamaged and undamaged. Fuck, what kind of physique was this? Ao Jian was instantly stunned. Was this guy really a human? Were you sure you weren't a monster from the immortal realm? Eat my sword as well. Ling Han took the opportunity to counterattack. Ao Jian had just delivered a powerful attack, and now was the time when his power and defense were in a vacuum. Although it was only a short instant, for Ling Han, an instant was enough. The Revere Life sword blossomed with endless light and slashed towards Ao Jian's neck. 10,000 techniques returned to one pu. The sword light streaked past, and a head soared into the skies. Fresh blood soared into the skies from the severed neck like a heavenly waterfall, shaking the space as if it was going to cause the heaven and earth to collapse. He's dead. When the 7 kings saw this, they all felt their hatred vented. This person actually wanted to use their king's corpse to flog it, which made them furious to the point of insanity. Now that Ao Jian had been beheaded by Ling Han, it naturally made them excited and slightly eased the pressure in their hearts.
He's not dead.
Ling Han shook his head and looked into the distance.
How could that be?
Isn't this his corpse? The 7 kings were all puzzled. This is only his body, but his spirit has left his body. Ling Han frowned. By right, though the spirit could leave the body, that was something that only immortals could do. Moreover, it had to be a very strong immortal who had cultivated the spirit to an incredibly stable degree. It was definitely not something that could be done by any immortal. But Ao Jian was obviously only in the Shattering Void tier. Come, this person should have obtained some kind of secret treasure. Perhaps it was some kind of godly medicine that could allow his spirit to leave his body, Ling Han thought as he put away the Revere Life sword. Though Ao Jian's spirit had escaped, his physical body had been severed here, so it was not as if he had not made a contribution. Your Imperial Majesties, the 7 kings once again cried out in grief. Today was a day of great sorrow for the Purple Gold Empire. The ruler had fallen, and the name of the empire had vanished, no longer existing from now on. Ling Han sighed and said, "Let's not worry about that for now. Let's make arrangements for Brother Ma's funeral." This obtained the approval of the 7 kings. When a person died, he would naturally be buried in peace. Those who had come to observe the ceremony had all become the people who would send off Ma Duo Bao on his last journey. Towards this elite cultivator, every single one of them held great respect. He had fallen at the final step of splitting open the skies. This was his death for the entire continent. Otherwise, with Ma Duo Bao's ability, wouldn't it be easy for him to protect himself? There would always be some people who would stake their lives for their ideals. The previous ruler had passed away, and this was naturally a state funeral. Moreover, he had died for the entire continent. The funeral was held for a whole month, and Ma Duo Bao's remains were personally sent by Ling Han to the core of the earth to accompany the vast lands forever. Following this, there were still many things to do. The handover of a nation was naturally not something that could be done with a single word. There were many details and trivial matters that had to be taken care of. Fortunately, though Helian Sun Shui was no longer here, there was still the Rain Emperor, the veteran, to help Ling Han share a lot of the pressure. Helian Tianyan also re-entered the sea region and began to recover the 4 seas. Now, though Ao Jian was not dead, he was only left with a wisp of his spirit. Even if he reappeared, so what? Could he be Helian Tianyan's match? One had to know that Helian Tianyan had battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier at the time, and his freakishness was not inferior to Ma Duo Bao's. Now that he had returned to the Shattering Void tier, his strength advanced by leaps and bounds, and it was believed that it would not be long before he would be able to return to the peak. Meanwhile, Ling Han cultivated diligently. The present him still did not have the qualifications to split open the skies. To be on the safe side, he definitely had to reach the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. People were easily forgetful. Though Ma Duo Bao had fought with great vigor at the time, after half a year had passed, everyone had all gone on to live their own lives, and very few people would mention this tragic figure again. However, Ling Han, the Seven Kings, and the others naturally would not forget. They were all suppressing a burst of energy to split open the skies, to become immortals, and to sweep through the 5 sects and the AO clan. This was definitely not something that could be accomplished overnight, but they did not lack patience and willpower. Helian Tianyun once again swept through the sea region, and the 4 seas became one, which also became the territory of the Great Ling Empire. This time, it was really true that all lands under the heavens belonged to the emperor. Ling Han could grasp the movements of every place in the world as long as he wanted to. He now controlled the resources of the whole lower realm, and added with the Black Tower, his cultivation speed was naturally astonishingly fast. Of course, the most important thing was that he had experienced the Shattering Void tier once in reincarnation, which allowed him to obtain the comprehension of the Shattering Void tier in advance, and there was no longer the slightest bit of bottleneck. Another half a year later, Ling Han finally advanced into the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and at this time, he was only 22 years old. All along the way, I have reached perfection, and even surpassed the limit, so my current strength has reached 10 stars. Ling Han estimated his own battle prowess. Don't say that he had achieved perfection in the previous 9 tiers, but now he could only increase his strength by 1 star. One had to know that a single star in the Shattering Void tier was a world of difference, and this kind of increase was incredibly shocking. If I go all out, my regular battle prowess can reach 20 stars. This was not Ling Han's limit, because he had just advanced into the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and could still polish his cultivation level, purify his origin power, and increase his strength by another level. Perhaps he could reach 11 stars of Shattering Void tier, and then his regular battle prowess would break through the limit of 20 stars. Chapter 652. Focus on fighting, don't force me to complain, Ling Han shouted. 10,000 techniques returned to one only needed the time of 1 or 2 breaths, and could still be activated no matter how short the time was. However, the accumulated power was small, and the power was also small. Lu Yuanji flew out, and the wooden sword swept past. A thick and long sword ray streaked past, exuding a terrifying radiance. Ling Han also gave a long howl, and raised his sword in a counterattack. 10,000 techniques returned to one was unleashed, and 29 flashes of sword chi condensed into a false ray. Under the activation of 10,000 techniques returned to one, this strike could even cut through the defenses of a deity transformation tier cultivator. After all, it was a level 10 spirit tool.
Hong.
False ray and true ray collided, and endless light burst forth, filling the entire cave. When the light disappeared, both Ling Han and Lu Yuanji could be seen to be riddled with wounds. Obviously, neither of them had gained the upper hand in this exchange. However, Ling Han's physique was really too strong, and the injuries he suffered were actually much lighter. Moreover, he cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and his injuries were recovering at an extremely fast rate. Lu Yuanji sheathed his sword, and said, "I can't defeat you." Ling Han nodded, and said, "It's very difficult for me to defeat you." Now, the 3 styles of black origin was not his trump card, but 3 mystical powers. If he drew out the sunset bow, or even used sharp arrows forged from level 8 rare metal, and used the power of the 3 mystical powers, the power would naturally rise to a whole new level. Lu Yuanji turned and left, not taking another look at that Thunder Lotus, appearing to be extremely free and at ease. This person was extremely strange, but he was able to take things on and let them go. However, he was too focused on the sword, and was somewhat insensitive to human emotions. His emotional intelligence was really too low, so he couldn't be considered a bad person. The world was indeed big, with countless capable people and countless geniuses. This Lu Yuanji had never been heard of, yet he suddenly appeared. Pa. Lu Yuanji had just left when the sound of footsteps was heard again. There was no end to it. Ling Han hurriedly ran to the side of the lightning pool and plucked that lightning lotus. This wasn't a real godly medicine, and was merely a special form formed by the power of lightning. It was a kind of metamorphosis, so even if it was planted in the Black Tower, it would be useless. It was impossible for a second stalk to grow. The lightning spirit hadn't been successfully nurtured, so it naturally couldn't be considered a true living being and didn't have any consciousness to speak of. Added with the fact that the pool of lightning had already dried up, Ling Han easily plucked the lightning lotus and stored it into the Black Tower. There was no hurry to refine it now. The sound of footsteps could be heard. This time, 5 people returned, 1 man and 4 women. The man was extremely handsome, while the 4 women were beautiful. However, they were too flirtatious. Every movement, every smile, every frown seemed to be seductive. The man's gaze swept across, and when he saw the empty lightning pool, a cold expression appeared on his face as he shouted, "Was it you who took the heaven cloud, purple thunder?" Ling Han did not answer. Instead, he turned around and looked at the wall full of portraits. "How dare you? My young master is asking you a question, and you dare not to answer," a woman snorted. "Ugly woman, you dare to be fierce to Nyo's Ling Han." Hu Nyo flew into a rage and glared at the other, killing intent soaring. "Bite! Bite her to death," the rabbit shouted from the side, as if wanting to see the world in chaos. However, Hu Nyo curled her lips and said, "She's too smelly. Nyo can't bear to eat her." "Then why did you bite Uncle Rabbit so happily?" The rabbit was infuriated. "Rabbit meat is fragrant, delicious." Hu Nyo's eyes lit up. "You too." The woman who shouted earlier was furious. This man and rabbit actually dared to ignore her. Wait, a rabbit could actually speak? The man appeared to be impatient and said, "This young master is Shimin Jun, the heir of the Wind Moon sect. Hurry up and hand over the heaven cloud purple thunder, or else this young master will definitely kill you without mercy." Wind Moon sect Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, "Is the Wind Moon sect very awesome?" "Humph. My young master is the 4th disciple of the Wind Moon sect master, and has already advanced into the spiritual infant tier at the mere age of 34. With such cultivation, even in the middle state, he can be classified as a top-notch genius." The second woman praised. This obviously made Shimin Jun very happy, and he proudly crossed his arms in front of his chest, putting on a posture that said, "I'm awesome. Come and worship me." Ling Han said, "Come." The sect master of the Wind Moon sect not only lost a son, but also lost a disciple. This kind of evil and despicable sect, one day I'll sweep it clean. "Davich what?" Shimin Jun couldn't help but be shocked, and took a few more glances at Ling Han. "Could it be that junior brother, who was killed by you?" "Correct answer." Ling Han clapped his hands. Shimin Jun instantly laughed loudly, and said, "The heavens are really helping me. Master has already issued an order, and whoever can capture or kill the murderer that killed junior brother, who will pass on the position of sect master. Today, this young master will not only obtain the heaven cloud purple thunder, but also become the young sect master of the Wind Moon sect." He was too happy. This was really double happiness. What amazing luck. "Congratulations, young sect master." No, it should be "Congratulations, young sect master." "Congratulations, young sect master." The 4 girls all said joyfully, and all pounced on him to offer fragrant kisses. Shimin Jun didn't refuse any of them, and his hands even groped all over the 4 girls' bodies. If it weren't for the fact that there was still Ling Han who hadn't been dealt with yet, they believed that they wouldn't mind having a go first. Ling Han covered Hu Nyo's eyes, and killing intent appeared on his face as he said, "Truly a group of adulterous men and women. If I don't kill, I can't clean up the world, and the bright blue sky is about to be covered by filth." He didn't say another word, and with a flash of lightning on his body, he charged over.
"How dare you?"
The 4 girls pounced at the same time, counterattacking towards Ling Han. Ling Han brandished a sword, and as the demon birth sword danced, who could be a match for it? Pooh, Piu, 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 for heads flew into the sky, and the four headless bodies also waved their hands and feet, blood madly spurting from their severed necks. No, Shimin-jun roared angrily. Though he didn't lack beauties, these four girls were his favorites. Not only were their looks top-notch, but they were also flirtatious to the bone. Their martial art level wasn't low, either, and they could often fight on his behalf, saving him a lot of trouble. You deserve to die. He glared at Ling Han, his eyes almost spitting fire. Dire sisters. Ling Han charged over again, lightning flashing on his body, his speed astonishingly fast. Shimin-jun could only parry based on his intuition. Two short hammers appeared in his hands, and they were pitch black. There was a circular pattern on the hammers, and they emitted a terrifying aura, obviously extremely unusual.
Pung.
However, although he blocked Ling Han's sword, he couldn't disperse that terrifying power at all. His whole body was instantly blasted away by the sword. Pung. He crashed into the cave wall, and the shock caused his whole body to spit out a mist of blood. One had to know that this cave wall had been tempered by a shattering void tearlete, so how could it not be hard? Shimin-jun revealed a shocked expression. He was in the spiritual infant tier, but he actually wasn't a match for a single strike from Ling Han. How was this possible? Nothing is impossible. You're just a frog at the bottom of a well, so how would you know what level the elites in this world can reach? Ling Han waved his sword again. The disciples of the Wind Moon sect were all shameless and lowly people, and every single one of them deserved to die. Pooh! Shimin-jun's head also flew into the sky. Chapter 653. There will be more and more people. I have to settle this quickly. Ling Han sheathed his sword and turned to look at the wall that blocked their way. He could not go any further. There were 999 stone boxes, and on each box was carved a portrait of a person. There were old and young, male and female. Is this a mechanism? One wrong button, and there will be a terrifying restriction that will kill, Ling Han mumbled. After his gaze swept around, he stared at one of the portraits and smiled. That should be the case. Isn't this Zi Shuexian? If one did not obtain the memory stone in the thunder battle armor and only came here by coincidence, then the possibility of choosing this box would only be 1 in 1,000. According to Zi Shuexian's personality, she would definitely not give people a second chance. There is definitely a restriction activated here to kill the one who comes. This cave wall has been completely tempered by Zi Shuexian, so it must be used to silence people. With a flick of his finger, he shot out a burst of qi and knocked on that portrait of Zi Shuexian. Instantly, the stone wall made a cracking sound and began to move, slowly parting towards the two sides. The speed went from slow to fast, and very soon, it was completely opened, revealing a stone chamber. It was not big, no more than 3 meters wide, and only about 6 meters deep. The things inside were even simpler. There was only a long table, and on top of it was a booklet. Ling Han walked in, and Hunyo naturally followed closely behind. After a moment's hesitation, Rabbit also followed in. The stone wall quickly closed again, locking them inside the stone chamber. However, though it was tightly sealed inside, it was not dark. The surrounding walls were all emitting a soft glow, as if they were made of beautiful jade. Ling Han came to the long table, sat down, and opened the booklet. This was what Zi Shuexian had left behind. There were no precious treasures, and a mighty shattering void tier elite was extremely shabby. Ling Han stood up. Instantly, he frowned, and then revealed a furious expression, his killing intent soaring. After he finished reading the booklet, he knocked the table heavily, almost flipping it over. Let Uncle Rabbit. Rabbit snatched the booklet and immediately began to read. Very soon, it also revealed a shocked expression. He really could not help but be shocked. If what Zi Shuexian had said was true, then all the people of the vast lands were living in a gigantic lie. Ling Han sorted out his thoughts. This was what Zi Shuexian had told him. About a few 100,000 years ago, some forces in the realm of immortals suddenly became interested in the lower realm. This interest was not for the various resources of the lower realm, but for the living beings of this realm. This was an extremely shocking matter. These powers from the god world had obtained an ancient recipe that could refine all of the living beings of an entire world into a divine pill. It contained the resources of an entire world, as well as the natural laws of an entire world. Even in the god world, it was an extremely precious medicine. However, this was a taboo in the god world, and it was definitely not allowed to be refined. But it was different in the lower realm. These few forces from the immortal realm easily controlled this continent, and their representatives were the 5 great ancient sections. Why was it that every time a great disaster occurred, the 5 great sects would always be able to turn the tide? That was because they were on the same side in the first place, and they were not turning the tide, but merely cleaning up after the matter. These forces from the god world used 10,000 years as a cycle, as if they were raising livestock in a pen. They used 10,000 years to allow the vast lands to recover, and also allowed the environment of martial art to flourish. All sorts of elites and geniuses appeared frequently, and natural treasures also appeared in multiples. This was the accumulation of 10,000 years, ushering in a great explosion, and it was all for the sake of the god world, refining the realm pill. The pill of the living beings of an entire world naturally had outstanding effects. Zi Xuexian was an outstanding disciple of the Blue Thunder sect, and was also the descendant of some powerful race in the god world. After she understood the truth, she was extremely furious. On one hand, she left behind the truth, and on the other, she began to fight against the reapers of the god world. In the end, Ling Han arrived. There were too many elites in the god world, and the 3 of them combined were enough to suppress her. And the establishment of the Restore Heaven Academy was also a conspiracy. Its purpose was indeed to select prodigies of the present age, but it was not to leave behind some kindling for the future, but rather to bring them into the god world, and after brainwashing them, they would become the vassals of those few forces. To put it bluntly, they would become lackeys. Geniuses, after all, could become useful lackeys. Additionally, high-level alchemists or alchemists with outstanding abilities would also be brought to the god world to be taught immortal-grade alchemy techniques, but it was obviously not to nurture them, but to use them as tools for alchemy. At that time, aside from beings like Rabbit who had a background in the god world, all other living beings would be completely exterminated, regardless of whether they were humans, demonic beasts, or trees, or even rock spirits, fire spirits, or water spirits. After the realm pill was concocted, the whole lower realm would become a barren land, and almost all living beings would die out. These forces of the god realm, which were the true origins of the Heaven Sword sect and the Absolute Saber sect, were called the Heaven Sword Palace and the Absolute Saber Palace, and were also very powerful forces in the god realm. It was not that their actions were unheard of, but due to fear of their strength and the fact that they were only harming ants from the lower realm, everyone turned a blind eye to it. Moreover, beings like Rabbit, who had a background, could also escape this calamity, so the elders who had ascended to the god realm a long time ago would not make a big fuss. All in all, the Heaven Sword Palace and the other 4 great forces were progressing very smoothly in this matter. In total, they had already concocted the realm pill a few dozen times, and used this to nurture a great many elites who were also at the level of being able to summon wind and rain in the god realm. If Ling Han's physical body had not been shattered by the Black Tower in his last life, then he would only have 2 choices. First, he would be brought to the god realm. With his talent in alchemy, he would definitely be able to be nurtured, and perhaps he would even be able to marry a woman from the god realm as his wife. But in any case, he would still not be able to escape the fate of becoming a slave. Second, he would fight with his life, but he would definitely not be able to win against the powerful and would not be able to escape death. It was precisely because of this that the 5 great sects hated the Thousand Corpse sect so much. That was because the Thousand Corpse sect wanted to turn all living beings into corpse soldiers, and in that case, how would they be able to concoct the realm pill? There would not be enough raw materials at all. Previously, Ling Han had always been curious that if the God realm really wanted to invade the lower realm, what right did the five great sects have to resist? How could they actually chase the invaders from the God realm back? However, in reality, they were basically in cahoots. After the realm pill was concocted, the Heaven Sword Palace and the others would leave behind a batch of seeds, and in 10,000 years' time, the lower realm would slowly recover its vitality, waiting for the next harvest. The Heaven Sword sect and the other four great sects would be responsible for keeping watch and guiding the martial art. Otherwise, after 10,000 years, the martial art of the lower realm might only be able to recover to the level of the spiritual ocean and spiritual pedestal tier. Then, the effects of concocting the realm pill would be poor. And the next 10,000 years were about to arrive. The Reapers from the God realm would enter the lower realm and join forces with the Heaven's Sword sect and the others. With the lower realm as the cauldron and all living beings in the world as the medicine, they would concoct a new realm pill. They deserve to be killed. All of them deserve to be cut 1,000 times. Rabbit stamped with rage. Chapter 654. Ling Han was also furious, the veins on his forehead bulging, burning with a killing intent that seemed to burn the heavens. Too hateful, actually using the living beings of a realm as medicinal ingredients to refine. What kind of madness was this? Could it be that the five great divine sects were all beasts in human form? But even if they were beasts in human form, the vast lands didn't only have humans. On this land, there were his friends and relatives, but they could all suddenly encounter a great disaster in the near future, causing his killing intent to soar. If the heavens are unfair, then I'll destroy the heavens. Such a thought rose in Ling Han's mind. Weng, his whole body shook, entering a strange state. Sword intent surged all over his body, as if his whole person had become a sword, showing off its edge. Fuck, this brat is too excited. About to comprehend, Rabbit exclaimed, also full of envy. People said that it was easy to comprehend under extreme emotions, but that was only for geniuses. Otherwise, if your talent wasn't enough, no matter how excited you were, it would be a waste. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Ling Han's fingers waved unconsciously, and flashes of sword qi danced. This was a secret room, and it wasn't big. As the sword qi danced, it instantly filled the entire stone room. Ioyo, you want to shoot your Uncle Rabbit to death? Rabbit hurriedly fled, but there was sword qi everywhere, so it could only circulate origin power to form a shield and take it head-on. However, Ling Han's battle prowess was too terrifying. Even if these sword qi were just flicked by fingers, the destructive power was shocking, causing it to cry out in pain. Fortunately, it was also a freak, and its skin was so thick that even Hunyo couldn't bite through it. It was fine to take a few of Ling Han's sword qi head-on, but pain was naturally unavoidable. Hunyo, however, giggled and walked freely under the sword qi. Her figure turned, and she could even unbelievably change shape and suddenly dodge, appearing extremely strange. Rabbit couldn't help but widen its eyes and mumbled, "Body of lightning, truly shocking," able to turn into lightning and change its body at will, even flashing like lightning, compressing space to form short-distance teleportation. If this girl really has an ancestor in the immortal realm, then what level of existence is that? The king of gods. Ling Han entered an unconscious state, and under the provocation, he instead obtained a breakthrough. The door of the 30 sword qis was slowly opening for him. He had been stuck at the level of 29 flashes of sword qi for a very long time. This was a true threshold, and since ancient times, it had been considered the limit of qi. Naturally, it was incomparably difficult to cross. Even though he was a genius, he was still stuck. But after so many days, he already had a hazy understanding. It was as if there was only a thin layer of window paper, but he was always that little bit away. It was only at this moment, in his rage, that he broke through that layer of window paper. Weng, weng, weng. Ling Han's entire body was emitting sword qi, and it was no longer just his fingers. 30 streams of sword qi was truly the limit. This was a metamorphosis. Success. Rabbit exclaimed in surprise. This brat was also a freak. Comprehending qi was actually as easy as drinking water. Although the comprehension of qi was nothing much, and was only a small peak on the path of martial arts, there were still many higher peaks that needed to be climbed, but it was already enough to produce a freak like Ling Han. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes, and revealed a faint look of joy. He had not thought that he would actually reach 30 flashes of sword qi in such a state. Now, he could condense Ray and no longer had to fight with fake Ray, so his battle prowess would naturally increase once again. However, joy could not erase his fury. The 5 great sects were really deranged. They had obviously been rearing the whole world as if they were livestock, but for 10,000 years, they had actually put on the appearance that they were their saviors and made the people worship them. No wonder Zi Shuexian would say that they had been living in a giant lie all along. After the destruction of the world, someone must have left behind the truth of the past, but the 5 great sects had 10,000 years to brainwash and destroy the evidence of their crimes, so they still sat high on the altar. No wonder the 5 great sects guarded the ancient map so tightly. They were afraid that there might be some clues left behind in the ancient map that would lead to the secrets of 10,000 years ago, or even the secrets of 20,000, 50,000, or 100,000 years ago. Ling Han's emotions stabilized. Agitation could not solve problems, and on the contrary, letting his emotions affect his decisions would only ruin things. For example, if he were to loudly shout now and reveal the true faces of the 5 great sects, how many people would believe him? Weren't you splashing dirty water on the 5 great ancient sects and slandering the great heroes of 10,000 years ago? Your intentions were deserving of death. No wonder Small Saber King was so indifferent to life, because in his eyes, they were all dregs. So what if a few died? I swear, not only will I flatten the 5 great sects here, but when I charge into the divine realm in the future, those so-called 5 great divine sects will not be able to escape destruction. Ling Han said, clenching his fists. Brat, Uncle Rabbit will support you in spirit, Rabbit said undependably. Ling Han Nyo supports you. Defeat everyone. You become the emperor, and Nyo becomes the empress. Hu Nyo was very loyal and completely didn't know what bashfulness was. Ling Han laughed loudly, but when Hu Nyo mentioned the emperor and empress, his heart moved. Zi Shuexian didn't only leave behind the truth, but also mentioned how to resolve such a predicament. Simple, split open the skies. Bring the entire vast lands to ascend into the divine realm, making the vast lands a part of the divine realm. Then, the divine realm would have the divine realm's rules, and the 5 great divine sects definitely couldn't harm the people of the divine land. Otherwise, they would really suffer the wrath of the entire divine realm. Even if the 5 great divine sects were awesome, they definitely couldn't withstand it. Splitting open the skies. How could it be easy? Feng Priyun said that shattering void and becoming an immortal would be extremely dangerous now, because the 5 great divine sects sealed off the passage to becoming an immortal in this realm and set up a killing formation that could kill any shattering void tier cultivator. In this realm, shattering void tier cultivators were the strongest. Even immortals would be restricted by the Tao of heaven and earth when they descended, but once they left this place, the shattering void tier cultivators would still be shattering void tier cultivators, but the immortals would recover to the bodies of immortals. Immortals could kill shattering void tier cultivators as easily as turning over their palms. So, aside from the people of the 5 great sects who could break open the void and enter the divine realm, anyone else would be seeking death by doing so. However, now was also the best time. Because the rules of development of the vast lands had been changed by the 5 great divine sects, practically all the accumulation of 10,000 years was unleashed in these short few hundred years. This could maximize the effects of the realm pill they concocted, and for the martial artists here, it was also an opportunity for extremely fast growth. Otherwise, where would so many geniuses come from? Ling Han couldn't help but think, what about his 4 disciples? If they all became immortals, wouldn't that be betraying their own dignity? Ling Han's expression was gloomy. If he could still see Zhang Yufeng and the others in the future, he would definitely ask them clearly, or else he would definitely execute the sect's rules and purge the immoral disciples. Now, the problem returned to splitting open the skies. Splitting open the skies had to be done in the form of a nation, because an individual's battle prowess was limited, but to bring the whole land into the divine realm, the power needed surpassed even a few hundred or a few thousand shattering void tier cultivators. So, only with the help of the power of the nation could one break through the 9 heavens and enter the divine realm, turning the vast lands into a part of the divine realm, and everyone would have the hope of becoming immortals. Ma Duo Bao. Ling Han suddenly remembered that Ma Duo Bao mentioned splitting open the skies to him several times, and directly pointed out that the divine realm was their greatest enemy. Could it be that he already knew the truth? Otherwise, why would he establish the Purple Moon Empire? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 655. Ding Ping's gaze swept over them. One of them was called Ding Yuxuan, and the other was Ding Xingwei. They had once been his underlings, and they were the kind of people who dared not go west when he told them to. But now, they were all shameless and arrogant, completely looking down on him. In reality, Ding Ping also knew that he had a crippled spirit base, and it was impossible for him to remain as the eldest young master of the Ding clan. It was not that he could not accept the clan's request for him to abdicate his position, but the viciousness of these people's words and expressions, and how quickly they turned hostile, made his heart turn cold. They were all of the same clan, so did they have to be so cold and realistic? That's right. I forgot to tell you a piece of good news. Ding Feiwen laughed loudly. A few days ago, I went to the Crimson Sun sect to become an apprentice, and I've already passed. To be able to be called a sect, that meant that there would at least be an elite of the spiritual infant tier holding the fort, and what kind of force was the Ding clan? They were only in the spiritual ocean tier, and were far too inferior. Thus, the fact that Ding Feiwen could enter the Crimson Sun sect could be said to be a huge piece of good news for the Ding clan. It was no different from their daughter marrying into the imperial palace and becoming an imperial concubine. It was no wonder that the Yi clan would make a move so quickly, betrothing Yi Yuan to Ding Feiwen. This was a true wealthy son-in-law. In the future, when Ding Feiwen came out from the Crimson Sun sect, his cultivation level should be at least in the spiritual ocean tier. It was not impossible for him to advance into the spiritual pedestal tier, or even the flower blossom tier. He would be invincible in Whitewater Town. Big Brother Feiwen, you're so awesome. Yi Yuan expressed her admiration at a timely moment, giving Ding Feiwen a great sense of satisfaction. Ding Ping saw all this, and his heart calmed down. At this moment, he suddenly let go and thought things through. Yi Yuan had never truly loved him. She had only taken a fancy to the position of young master of the Ding clan, and he had once been favored by the clan because of his potential. Moreover, what he liked was not the real Yi Yuan, but the gentleness that she had put on a facade. Since that was the case, why should he be sad? Was it worth it for a woman who did not like him? Why should he be calculative with these people? They only lived in a pond, and had absolutely no idea how vast the rivers and seas were. Though Ling Han had not clearly revealed his identity, Ding Ping could guess that the status of this master was definitely extremely high. The domineering air that flowed out from his every movement was definitely incomparable. Just take Ling Han's previous technique, for example. In the short span of a day, he had been completely reborn, and his current power was comparable to the first layer of element gathering tier. If this was revealed, it would definitely shock everyone in the clan to death. What's more, the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body art could allow him to possess the power of 9 true dragons after he had successfully cultivated it, which was even more astonishing. In comparison, what was the position of young master of the Ding clan worth? What was a disciple of the Crimson Sun sect worth? With a single thought, Ding Ping's mentality instantly changed, and his temperament also became much more mature. He was no longer angry. The other party had not treated him as a member of the clan, but he still remembered their friendship and calmly said, "Please excuse me, I want to go back and rest." "Pooh, ha ha." Ding Yuxuan and Ding Xingwei both laughed loudly. Admitting defeat so quickly? At least now, you are still the young master of the Ding clan. As long as your title was not removed, you would still be the leader of the younger generation of the Ding clan. The corners of Yi Yuan's mouth also curled up into an inadvertent sneer. Fortunately, she had discovered it early. Otherwise, wouldn't she regret it for the rest of her life when she married into the Ding clan? Ding Feiwen laughed loudly. This mountain that he could only look up to in the past had now lost even the slightest bit of its arrogance, and it was no longer satisfying to step on it. He spread his legs slightly apart and said, "Sure, crawl over from under me, and I won't bully you anymore."
He he he.
Ding Yuxuan and Ding Xingwei both laughed coldly, and the two guards also revealed expressions of schadenfreude. They were all joking. Ding Ping's expression was calm, and he said, "Don't block my way, or you will regret it." "Oh, I'd like to see how you will make me regret it," Ding Feiwen said proudly. Ding Ping strode over, his fists clenched tightly. "You want to force your way through? You really overestimate yourself." Ding Feiwen humphed. He had already awakened his spirit base 3 years ago, and now he had also cultivated to the 9th layer of body refining tier. If it wasn't for the fact that the barrier of element gathering tier was too difficult to break through, he would definitely have already broken through. But this was fine. As long as he entered the Crimson Sun sect, he would be able to receive guidance from the great elites of the sect and be nurtured with resources. Breaking through to element gathering tier would definitely be within reach. "Get out of my way." Ding Ping was already closing in on him. "Are you worthy?" Ding Feiwen clasped his hands together and took the initiative to attack. He knew that Ding Ping had a strange strength since he was young and could not be underestimated. Ding Ping's battle prowess was equivalent to that of a martial artist in the 5th layer of body refining tier. But that was all there was to it. He simply did not dare to be hit directly by Ding Ping. If they really fought, his power of the 9th layer of body refining tier would definitely be able to suppress Ding Ping.
Hum.
Ding Ping brandished his fist, fast and heavy. Pung! Ding Feiwen's palms were forcefully parried, and the fist arrived like a hot knife through butter, smashing into his face. His muscles instantly undulated like water ripples, and his whole person was sent flying, crashing backwards. He crashed heavily into the wall, and then bounced back. He was groaning in pain and was actually unable to get up in a short period of time. What kind of situation was this? Yi Yuan, Ding Yuxuan, Ding Xingwei, and the two guards were all stunned. How could this be possible? That was Ding Feiwen, a martial artist in the 9th layer of body refining tier, the #1 elite of the younger generation of the Ding clan. Even if Ding Ping possessed monstrous strength, his power had already been surpassed by Ding Feiwen 2 years ago. It was only because the clan valued his potential that they allowed him to remain in the position of eldest young master. Who would have thought that Ding Feiwen would actually be defeated with a single punch? Yi Yuan's beautiful eyes were wide open. Could it be that Ding Ping had been concealing his true strength all this while? Otherwise, how could he possibly defeat Ding Feiwen with a single punch? Even if Ding Feiwen had been careless and had not used his full strength in that previous attack. Ding Ping retracted his fist and strode away as if nothing had happened. But only he himself knew how excited he was in his heart. He had endured this punch for a whole half a year, and today, he had finally delivered it. It was easy to deliver a punch, but to deliver such an effect was really too difficult. "Master," he called out in his heart, as if he was addressing a god, his voice filled with sincerity. The clan's attitude caused him to feel bitterly disappointed. He only had one thought now, and that was to wait for Ling Han to finish his business, then bring him away from this icy cold place. His parents, grandfather, and grandmother had all died early. Though he still had 2 uncles, they had basically stopped paying attention to him since half a year ago. Brother Feiwen. When Ding Ping had walked far away, Yi Yuan and the others finally helped Ding Feiwen up. "That brat actually dared to plot against me. I'm going to complain to the elders of the clan and have them punish that brat according to the clan's rules." Ding Feiwen said through gritted teeth, His expression twisted.
Plot.
Ding Yuxuan and Ding Xingwei hurriedly nodded and said, "That's right. That brat must have plotted against Brother Feiwen. Otherwise, how could he possibly have defeated Brother Feiwen with a single punch?" Ding Feiwen immediately glared at the two of them. They actually still dared to mention the matter of his defeat. Yi Yuan's beautiful eyes flashed. She had to immediately return home and report this matter. It was more refreshing to read on a cell phone. Chapter 656. Normally, Ling Han couldn't fuse with this divine lightning. This was a divine item that was about to nurture a lightning spirit. Heaven Cloud Purple Lightning could definitely be ranked among the 10 strongest lightning powers in the world, and one had to be at the Heaven tier to be qualified to fuse with it. If the younger generation like Ling Han wanted to fuse with Purple Lightning, they had to obtain the help of a Heaven tier or Shattering Void tier elite, allowing them to dispel the murderous aura of the Purple Lightning with great power. Otherwise, the power of lightning would explode inside the body, and no matter how much of a genius you were, you'd die cleanly. However, Ling Han didn't have to, because he had the Black Tower. Here, he was God, and everyone had to grovel at his feet. The lightning spirit was obviously an exception, not to mention that it hadn't become a lightning spirit yet. However, the fusion process wasn't as simple as Ling Han imagined. Heaven Cloud Purple Lightning was too high level. Even if Ling Han recovered his last life's cultivation, it wouldn't be easy to refine it, let alone in this life. With the Black Tower, Ling Han only had the ability to refine Purple Lightning, and it couldn't be done in one go. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry. There were still about 4 months until the Restore Heaven Academy's recruitment, and there was plenty of time. He decided to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat during this recruitment, becoming the idol and peak of the younger generation. This way, in the future, with a wave of his arm, there would naturally be countless people willing to follow him. The role of an idol definitely couldn't be underestimated. For example, Wang Yiyun established the Heaven Striking Alliance because of Lang Yitian's prestige. Of course, Wang Yiyun's own charm couldn't be ignored, but on this point, if Ling Han really wanted, he could let Zhu Xian'er also act as an ambassador. North Region, no, the world's #1 beauty's appearance, who wouldn't eagerly come. The power of lightning spread inside Ling Han's body, continuously transforming his body, changing every piece of his flesh and blood towards the direction of lightning. This was very interesting. He cultivated body of iron sheet, and his physique was as hard as high-grade rare metal, but if he transformed into lightning, he would become an untouchable existence. An ancient legend surged through his mind, something he'd heard in his last life. For example, the body of lightning that he was about to cultivate, as well as similar body of flame, body of ice, and so on, were all known as spiritual bodies. The greatest characteristic of a spirit body was that it could ignore the bombardment of power. Even if your power was 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times greater than mine, I could transform into lightning and flames. I didn't have a physical body, so how could you hurt me? Isn't that invincible? No, pure strength couldn't hurt him, but chi could. Sword chi, saber chi, staff chi, as long as it was chi, it would be able to injure a spirit body. However, how much damage it could cause would depend on the difference in strength between the two. It might not cause any damage at all, but it might cause severe injuries or even severe injuries. At any time, strength was king. This was also why those who cultivated chi could be called kings. It was because this was the only method that could injure a spirit body. Of course, if chi could be used, then there was no need to talk about on. The body of iron sheet, however, was completely different. It increased one's physique. Regardless of whether the opponent had sword chi or not, he would take it head-on. There was no need to talk about empty words. He would speak with his own strength. A physique on the same level as rare metal, normal sword chi couldn't hurt him at all. Just from the perspective of defense, the body of iron sheet and the body of diamond are definitely more awesome. After all, that's the indestructible Heaven Scroll, inherited from the Black Tower, Ling Han said inwardly. However, there was nothing bad about the body of lightning. It could at least increase his speed by a few times. Additionally, it could make the toughness of his physique his final trump card. Others thought that they could break through his defense, but who would have thought that they couldn't do anything to him at all, and just happened to be killed by a single strike of his sword? Of course, the more trump cards, the better. Unexpectedly, not only was the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven absorbing the power of lightning, but even the indestructible Heaven Scroll was automatically circulating, competing with the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. More importantly, the indestructible Heaven Scroll was much more awesome, making the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven look like an aggrieved little wife. Only after the indestructible Heaven Scroll swallowed many mouthfuls in large mouthfuls could it hook that little bit. Fuck, I'm cultivating the body of lightning now. Why are you fighting over it? The body of diamond can be cultivated with other worldly treasures. Don't waste the power of lightning. Ling Han hurriedly took the initiative to suppress the indestructible Heaven Scroll, not letting it continue circulating. The Thunderclap Ninth Heaven finally became a wife and began to greedily absorb the power of lightning, making Ling Han's lightning transformation speed suddenly increase. Time passed quietly. Ling Han focused on refining the purple lightning, regardless of day or night. He had now reached the peak of the flower blossom tier and polished this tier to the extreme. There was no room for improvement, so he obviously didn't need to cultivate. Cultivating wouldn't bring any benefits anyway. Fortunately, the Black Tower's space was unusually large, and there were countless flowers and trees planted. There were mountains and rivers, as well as all kinds of wild beasts and beasts. Zhu Xian'er and Hunyo wouldn't be too lonely, eating and drinking all day long. After Zhu Xian'er crossed the threshold of the flower blossom tier, her cultivation began to skyrocket. She was originally one of the strongest geniuses of the North region, not inferior to Wen Yijian, Mu Rongqing, and the others. Now that she received the support of endless resources, her cultivation naturally advanced quickly. Moreover, she was also suppressing a sense of dissatisfaction in her heart. Every time they encountered danger, they would first hide in the Black Tower, but Hunyo could accompany Ling Han and take risks. In the end, it was because she was not strong enough and could only become Ling Han's burden. She wanted to become strong. Geniuses weren't scary, but what was scary was that geniuses were willing to cultivate diligently. Normal people could only look up to them. 1 month, 2 months. Ling Han finally cultivated the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven to the minor accomplishment level and could completely transform his body into lightning. Combined with the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, his speed would be displayed to the extreme, and at the same time, he could add the power of lightning when he attacked. This was Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder. The power of lightning could even threaten Heaven Tier warriors. If it weren't for the crucial moment of transforming into a Thunder Spirit, how could Ling Han have obtained it so easily? Luck was also a part of one's strength. Ling Han didn't get up because there was still 1/3 of the power of lightning left, and he obviously couldn't waste it. Thus, he no longer suppressed the indestructible Heaven Scroll, allowing this art to absorb the power of lightning again. The Thunderclap Ninth Heaven was still operating. Cultivating a body of lightning wasn't the end. He could still continuously absorb the power of lightning. Just like how martial artists could accumulate origin power, lightning could obviously accumulate and increase its power. The quality of Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder was really too high. Ling Han felt his body undergoing some kind of shocking change. Golden light flickered all over his body from time to time, but he was one step away, unable to take the step. Body of Diamond was too difficult to cultivate. It was even more tyrannical than rare metals of the same level and could at least be improved by a level. For example, Ling Han was in the Flower Blossom tier, so he cultivated Body of Diamond and possessed the toughness of 7th tier rare metals. Even if he lay down and slept, a spiritual infant tier warrior's full power attack wouldn't be able to harm him. Moreover, Body of Diamond could regenerate severed limbs and only needed to consume indestructible true fluid. Now, he had 6 drops of indestructible true fluid, and if he cultivated Body of Diamond, the upper limit could increase to 10 drops.
Charge.
Ling Han madly absorbed the power of lightning and began to condense Sword Ray. In the instant that he cultivated Body of Diamond and condensed Sword Ray, he would charge towards the spiritual infant tier and truly undergo a qualitative change. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 657. Suddenly, another month passed. The main reason was that the Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder was too difficult to refine, and it took a total of 3 months to finally be completely refined. Most of it was used for Ling Han to cultivate into a body of lightning, and the remaining 1/3 was used to improve Ling Han's physique, advancing into the Diamond tier. However, after completely refining the Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder, Ling Han was still a step away from the Diamond body. He took out spiritual liquid and gulped it down while summoning the Heaven Transformation Bowl, harvesting the spirit medicine in the Black Tower and purifying it. This spiritual liquid was obtained from the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms and could be called Divine Liquid. It needed to be diluted before being absorbed, but in order to break through to the Diamond body, Ling Han only diluted it to 1/10 and started drinking. Instantly, violent energy surged within his body. It was as if a tsunami was about to smash his body into pieces. Ling Han hurriedly operated the indestructible Heaven Scroll to absorb the energy, making the final impact. Pleasure, pain. Pleasure was because his body received the support of a huge amount of energy, and he was approaching the Diamond body. This kind of upgrade in life level was naturally extremely pleasurable. However, the most painful part was that this energy was too violent. It battered against his skin, causing it to shatter. Even his bones were making clanging sounds, as if they were about to break. At this time, Ling Han couldn't operate the Thunderclap 9th Heaven and turn himself into a body of lightning to avoid harm, or else he wouldn't have to cultivate the Diamond body. He could only grit his teeth and endure. Pain and happiness, ice and fire colliding. Ling Han couldn't help but twitch his teeth and groan. Previously, he was numbed by the Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder, and now he was almost torn apart by the violent energy. The path of martial art was really difficult. No wonder so few could reach the end. Some things couldn't be done just by saying. It was easy to think, but it was difficult to persevere. However, the Diamond body was in the process of being cultivated. If he had to walk 100 steps to complete it, then he had walked 97 steps now. He was only a little bit away from completing it. At this time, even if Ling Han's arms were broken, his legs were broken, and all the bones in his body were broken, he had to grit his teeth and endure. 98 steps. 99 steps. 100 steps. Whoa. Ling Han's body released endless golden light, and he seemed to turn into a golden god of war, majestic and high above. Diamond body at the same time, a sword gleam appeared on his fingertip. It was surrounded by 30 strands of sword chi, and it was fusing together to become one. The real sword Ling Han persisted, and began to break through to the spiritual infant tier. Comparatively speaking, the spiritual infant tier was the easiest to reach, because he had already reached this step in his last life. However, whether it was the body of Diamond or Sword Ray, they were both things that he had never set foot on in his last life. That was easy. In just half a day, the 10 immortal flowers began to grow crazily. On the Earth God platform, 5 immortal flowers pierced through the sky, and on the Heavenly God platform, 5 immortal flowers fell like a waterfall. The 10 immortal flowers twisted together to form a giant immortal fruit. The fruit contained a spirit infant. Ling Han waved his hand, and the spiritual liquid, spiritual fruits, and medicinal pills were all swallowed into his mouth, turning into the most fundamental power to help him break through to the spiritual infant tier. The most important thing was that he had now cultivated the Diamond body. As his realm increased, the Diamond body would also increase in grade, and the energy required would be incomparably terrifying. Thankfully, he had already cultivated the body of Diamond, and this was only an increase in grade, so it was relatively easier to handle. The immortal fruit trembled slightly, and one could clearly feel a ripple-like fluctuation. At first, the skin of the fruit was golden, but now it was becoming more and more transparent, and one could clearly see that a small human figure was being nurtured inside, looking exactly the same as Ling Han. This was the spirit infant, and could be considered a martial artist's second divine sense. According to legends, after a martial artist became a god, the spirit infant could even leave the body and travel the world. And if the martial artist's divine sense was shattered, the spirit infant could even replace the main divine sense, giving the martial artist a second life. In short, in the following cultivation, the spirit infant was the focus, and everything revolved around it. Ling Han opened his mouth, and like a great whale, he madly sucked in large amounts of spiritual medicine to nurture the spirit infant as soon as possible. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Ling Han originally thought that he had already walked this path once, and breaking through to the spirit infant stage should be very fast, but he did not expect that this time his spirit infant was nurtured together by 10 immortal flowers, and the amount of energy needed to nurture it was terrifying. But correspondingly, the spirit infant that was nurtured would naturally be more powerful. Ling Han began to throw sword ray, diamond body, and lightning body into the spirit infant. Although it was only a legend, if the spirit infant could really leave his body in the future, then he wanted his spirit infant to possess the strongest ability. He branded the will of martial art on the immortal fruit. This was his own thing, and was completely like a blank piece of paper that he could write on. Very soon, countless vein-like patterns appeared on the skin of the immortal fruit. Ling Han had branded all that he had learned onto the spiritual infant. From a certain perspective, this was a second him. In any case, if he lost his memories one day, he would be able to rediscover his martial arts from the spiritual infant. Of course, it was only martial art and could not possibly brand his personality and experiences on it, at least not yet. Another 7 days later, the immortal fruit was covered with vein-like patterns, exuding an ancient and desolate aura. Especially the indestructible heaven scroll, which occupied 99% of the immortal fruit, it was as if a ruler had descended. Whether it was the 3 great mystical powers or the 3 styles of black origin, they were all suppressed to the point of being unable to do anything. From this, it could be seen how high the level of the indestructible heaven scroll was. Even the 3 great mystical powers combined couldn't reach 1%. Ka, 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 cracks appeared on the immortal fruit, and the spirit infant was about to be born.
Hung.
Ling Han felt his whole body shake, and his aura instantly soared. Spiritual infant Tyr in his dantian, the spirit infant broke through the immortal fruit, and turned into a small person that floated between the 2 spiritual oceans. When its eyes opened, they shone with a brilliant golden light, as if it was a god of war. Ling Han flicked his finger lightly, and the spirit infant followed suit. Hung. A sword ray shot out, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth immediately increased, increasing its power by 100-fold. After advancing into the spiritual infant Tyr, it was no longer the divine flowers that drew on the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to increase one's battle prowess, but the spiritual infant. And Ling Han's spirit infant was fused with 10 divine flowers, so its power was definitely not a simple addition. First layer of the spiritual infant Tyr, but battling a 9th star of the deity transformation Tyr is definitely not a problem. Ling Han smiled. This was extremely inconceivable. One had to know that the higher one's cultivation level was, the more difficult it was to battle surpassing one's cultivation level. In his last life, the Sword Emperor and the others could only surpass about 10 stars in the Heaven Tier, and though Ling Han had not returned to the Heaven Tier, and was only in the Spiritual Infant Tier now, his battle prowess had already surpassed about 30 stars. Anyone who knew about this would feel their scalp go numb. Of course, this was under the condition that he used his full battle prowess, such as using the 3 great mystical powers, or using 2 mystical powers in conjunction with the 3 styles of black origin. But even if he did not use mystical powers or the 3 styles of black origin, merely using Sword Ray and his basic battle prowess, it was definitely not a problem for him to fight against 20 stars of the Spiritual Infant Tier. Ling Han's opponents were no longer prodigies of the same cultivation level, but rather those who were one cultivation level higher than him. Only those who were qualified to fight him head-on. A great tremor actually appeared in the Black Tower as well. One after another, large lakes appeared out of thin air, and there were even waterfalls falling from the skies. It was extremely inconceivable. You've broken through to the spiritual infantier, and the second level has opened. Small tower appeared. Chapter 658. The second level of the Black Tower opened. Ling Han was instantly surprised and curious, and said, "Quick, take me there." "Aren't you already here?" Small Tower said indifferently. Ling Han's face twitched, and he said, "Are you kidding me? Didn't we agree that there are 9 levels and each level has treasures? You wouldn't embezzle them, would you?" TSK. Small Tower didn't feel anything about such a joke and only sneered and said, "The Black Tower indeed has 9 levels, but each level seals a different power. When your cultivation rises to a certain level, a level's power will be released and fused, making the Black Tower stronger and more useful." Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I only awakened the relevant memories after the second level opened," Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han looked at it suspiciously and said, "Does this count as amnesia?" "Whatever you say," Small Tower said shamelessly. "Fine, I'm scared of you." Ling Han sighed. "Then tell me, what benefits does the second level bring me?" Small Tower said, "From what I know now, the first 8 levels of the Black Tower respectively seal the power of the 5 elements, lightning, space, and time. With each level opened, the Black Tower can gain a corresponding power." "Why don't I feel anything?" Ling Han was a bit displeased. He had been looking forward to the second level of the Black Tower for a long time. "The first level is the source of earth," Small Tower said indifferently. "Why do you think the spirit herbs here can grow so quickly, 1 year equivalent to 1,000 years?" Ling Han was moved. The first level unlocked the power of earth, which was the source of earth, allowing him to continuously harvest spirit herbs. This function was extremely powerful. He asked, "Then the second level unlocked the power of water?" He said, pointing to the waterfall in the sky and the lakes that appeared out of nowhere. "Yes, the second level is the source of water." Small Tower nodded. "What benefits?" Ling Han asked. "You're really a Philistine, can't you ask some noble questions?" Small Tower mocked. "I'm really sorry." Ling Han gritted his teeth. "Aren't you an item spirit?
Can you not be so human?"
Small Tower was still calm, and calmly said, "Water is the source of all life. With the infusion of the power of water, first of all, the growth of the spiritual medicine will be faster and also better." This function was not bad. Ling Han nodded and said, "What's next? Can't you ask some more noble questions?" Small Tower began to mock him again. Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, "Do you believe that when I summon the Black Tower one day, I will throw it into the latrine pit to soak for 3 days and 3 nights?" The little pagoda was speechless, as if it was scared. Only after a while did it say, "Secondly, the water source and earth source interact and can produce some divine medicines, for example, the Buddhist lotus flower." Ling Han's heart trembled. The Buddhist lotus flower, he'd heard of this name in an ancient site. It was a true divine medicine, and in the divine realm, it was a top-notch existence. The Buddhist lotus flower should belong to the most inferior divine medicine. As the time of interaction between the water and earth sources, the divine medicine produced will be more precious, but the time will be very, very, very long, Small Tower said. This guy must be doing it on purpose, leaving him hanging. As expected, Small Tower said, "The third level, the metal source, can provide you with rare metal. The fourth level, the fire source, can refine your divine body. If you want to cultivate the third layer of the indestructible heaven scroll, you must refine with the fire source." The fifth level, the wood source, can once again increase the Black Tower's ability to nurture spiritual medicine, and water, earth, and wood source interact to produce supreme celestial medicine. The sixth level, the lightning source, can only be refined by lightning, and some special celestial medicines can grow. The 7th level, the space source, at that time, you can truly control the Black Tower and summon it whenever you want to aid you in battle. At that time, you'll truly know how strong the Black Tower's power is. The 8th level, the time source, is the world's taboo power, and even I'm not sure about the specifics. The 9th level, seeing small tower pause, Ling Han couldn't help but ask, how about the 9th level? I don't know, either, Small Tower said expressionlessly. Forget it. I'll talk to you less in the future, or I'll be angered to death by you. Ling Han sighed. However, the Black Tower opened the 2nd level, and the addition of the water source was always a good thing. He'd obtain a true divine medicine. He calculated the time. The Restore Heaven Academy's entrance test was about to begin, so he should hurry over. Ling Han. He called Zhu Xian'er and Hunyo over, and Hunyo immediately stuck to his embrace, appearing very unhappy. Ling Han hadn't played with her for a few months again. Zhu Xian'er looked at him as gentle as water, her gaze extremely moving. Ling Han nodded and said, "Let's go." They exited the Black Tower and hurried back to 9 Dragons Mountain. Not long after, Rabbit came to find them and naturally scolded Ling Han. This brat actually disappeared without a trace for a few months, making Uncle Rabbit search for him. Was he trying to renege on the 2 stalks of dragon blood tyrant ginseng? 3 days later, they returned to 9 Dragons Mountain. At this time, the Restore Heaven Academy announced the most basic conditions for admission. Those who didn't meet them didn't need to participate in the following test and didn't qualify to enter at all. To qualify for the test, one of the following 2 conditions had to be fulfilled: Flower Blossom tier before 40 or Spiritual Infant tier before 70. As for Deity Transformation tier, there was no requirement, because even among the middle-aged generation, there didn't seem to be any Deity Transformation tier geniuses appearing. In another 2 days, the test would officially begin. The test was divided into 2 parts. The first part seemed very simple, and one only had to walk out of an area set up by the Restore Heaven Academy within the stipulated time. As long as they walked out, they would be able to become a disciple of the Restore Heaven Academy. The second part was the battle for stones. In another area, the Restore Heaven Academy would bury many strange stones that couldn't be stored in spatial rings and could only be kept close to one's body. These stones would emit a brilliance that couldn't be concealed by clothes at close range. Within the stipulated time, the few who managed to snatch the most stones would become disciples that the Academy focused on cultivating and would be on par with Small Saber King, Yao Huiyu, and other geniuses that qualified to directly enter the Academy. Ling Han found the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, and after considering for a long time, he first brought the 2 of them into the Black Tower and then told them about Zi Shuexian's message. He didn't say it to the outside world because he was afraid that the other sky would have ears. This was what Ma Duobao had said, and he was very cautious. Ling Han didn't know what kind of ability immortals possessed, nor did he know what kind of method the 5 great immortal sects had used on this continent. Perhaps they could monitor an area and produce a reaction to sensitive words like splitting open the skies. So, safety first. Chapter 659. Sorry, your sister. Corpse Boss felt like he was going crazy. Was there really such a freak? He merely rounded out his tier and improved the level of his body arts, and his power began to soar again. Advancing 1 star was as easy as eating. Ling Han was also very speechless. His current power was mainly boosted by the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art, and after advancing into the Shattering Void tier, this body art finally exploded with terrifying might. At its peak, it could reach the power of 9 true dragons. This wasn't a fake true dragon like Helion Tianyun. In the immortal realm, only dragons that had reached the Genesis tier could be called true dragons. The power of 9 true dragons. How terrifying was that? Previously, helping Ding Ping to cleanse his marrow was also a form of training for him, and added with the 3 days of small seclusion that followed, his body art suddenly showed a great leap. Now, his brute force was at least 3 times stronger than his origin power, and this 9 dragons tyrant body art finally revealed its might. According to Ling Han's deduction, if origin power cultivated to its peak could reach the power of 1 true dragon, then his brute force could at most reach as much as 9 times that of origin power. Of course, this was also because the origin power art he cultivated wasn't powerful enough, so he could only reach the basic level of 1, or perhaps not even reach 1. Going by that logic, wouldn't the power of a living being be able to reach 20 stars of shattering void tier without relying on power of the nation? Ling Han suddenly sank into contemplation. Why must one rely on power of the nation to reach the peak? Why couldn't one be able to cultivate one's tier to the peak? In the world of martial arts, what was pursued was ultimately the strength of an individual. You couldn't possibly carry a country on your back and run around everywhere. He suddenly came to a realization. Power of the nation could only be used as an aid, and not as a means to be relied on. He wanted to cultivate his own power to 20 stars of shattering void tier, the true limit. The corner of Corpse Boss's mouth twitched. After Ling Han had delivered an attack, it was as if he had become a fool. What kind of contempt was this? I am indeed not a match for you. But for you to be so absent-minded like this, isn't it a bit too much? Ling Han, he roared angrily. Ling Han came back to his senses and could not help but smile. Sorry, I suddenly thought of something. Absent-mindedly in the midst of battle, what exactly were you thinking? What did you think of? Corpse Boss could not help but be curious. I was thinking of how to increase my power to 20 stars of shattering void tier. Ling Han did not hide it. He really wanted to have an exchange with someone, especially an elite of 2 lifetimes like Corpse Boss. Unfortunately, he did not remember the matters of his last lifetime. Corpse Boss inhaled sharply and said, "Are you sure you are not talking about battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, but power of 20 stars of shattering void tier?" "That's right." Ling Han nodded. "You're a freak,"
Corpse Boss pointed out.
Hey, brother Corpse Boss, though we have only met once before, we had a very pleasant conversation. Is it really appropriate for you to scold me like this? Ling Han said with a smile. If your power can rush up to 20 stars of shattering void tier, then how high would your battle prowess reach? Corpse Boss rolled his eyes. This was terrifying to even think about. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "People should always have some dreams, right?" Corpse Boss was stunned for a moment, then nodded solemnly, and said, "Yes." Then, he shook his arms and said, "There are still 9 moves." Ling Han chuckled, and stretched out his right hand again, pressing towards Corpse Boss. Corpse Boss faced the attack, and shouted, "Ling Han, bring out your full ability. Don't make me look down on you." "So it's like that." Ling Han used his other hand to rub his nose. "All right." He used the earth-overturning seal, and then circulated the thunderclap 9th heaven. Hung, a dazzling golden light and blazing white lightning emitted from his right hand.
Tung.
His palm pressed down, and Corpse Boss instantly disappeared. "Brother Corpse Boss, are you all right?" Ling Han asked as he withdrew his hand. Corpse Boss crawled up, continuously coughing up blood. His expression was desolate, and he mumbled, "I actually couldn't even block a single move. One had to know that he was in existence with battle prowess of 15 stars of shattering void tier, and if Ling Han hadn't been merciful, that strike just now would have been enough to take his life. The gap was too big." After being at a loss for a while, his gaze gradually became resolute. If Ling Han succeeded in splitting open the skies, then he would be able to enter into the immortal realm, and he would definitely be able to find a way to become even stronger. Just as Ling Han had said, what if he increased his strength to 20 stars of shattering void tier? The people of the Thousand Corpse sect are hiding 200 miles east of this place. "There is an ancient tomb there," Corpse Boss said, staring at Ling Han, and said, "The next time we meet, I hope we can fight to our heart's content." "All right," Ling Han agreed readily. His impression of Corpse Boss had always been very good. Corpse Boss stared at Ling Han for a while, then turned and left. Ding Ping's blood was boiling at the side, and he wished he could possess such battle prowess now, so that he could have a vigorous battle. Ling Han smiled and said, "The next time that person comes to challenge Master, you will be the one to accept the challenge." Ding Ping was startled at first, and immediately became so excited that he almost fainted. He felt the fighting spirit in his whole body soar into the skies, and some kind of unknown emotion awakened in his body, making him feel extremely heroic. He half knelt on the ground and said, "Disciple will definitely not disappoint Master." Ling Han nodded and said, "Now, it's time to clear away the last trouble before splitting open the skies." He brought Ding Ping with him, and after a few strides, they arrived at the ancient tomb that Corpse Boss spoke of. The 1,000 Corpse sect cultivated corpse techniques, and their whole bodies were covered in corpse chi. Once they were buried underground, no one could possibly tell the difference between them and corpses. Thus, tombs were naturally the best hiding place for them. Unless Ling Han had the determination to dig out all the tombs in the world, it was definitely impossible for him to find them out of thin air. But now that he had a spy, it was different. Ling Han did not say another word, and directly used his arm as a bow and origin power as an arrow, activating the annihilating dragon star arrow. He aimed at that ancient tomb from afar, loosened his hand, and xiao, the arrow of origin power, shot out. It shot into the group of ancient tombs. It was best for the annihilating dragon star arrow to use a physical bow and arrow as the foundation. Only then could the shot unleash the strongest power. However, Ling Han was too strong now, and he didn't need a physical bow and arrow to unleash the greatest power. This was a real secret technique of the immortal realm, Hong. The origin power arrow shot down, and the entire group of ancient tombs instantly disappeared, turning into a deep crater. Xiao, only a dozen people soared into the sky. The 9th Underworld King, Corpse 2, Rong Huanxian, as well as 9 skinny old men surrounded by corpse chi, appearing in the middle of the night would definitely scare people to death. Under this attack, everyone below the heaven tier was completely annihilated. Ling Han. When he said Ling Han, Rong Huanxian immediately gritted his teeth. He and Ling Han could be considered old rivals, and they had been entangled since the very beginning in the desolate north until now. However, aside from the first time when he had the upper hand, he had always been suppressed by Ling Han, which deeply pierced a thorn in his heart. One had to know that he had now advanced into the heaven tier, and such advancement speed could be said to be terrifying, but compared to Ling Han, it really wasn't worth mentioning. In front of Ling Han, he was dim and lightless, and could only serve as a pitiful foil. He refused to accept this. He was also someone who received the favor of heaven and earth. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.